Almost.
Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release, although today we are not going to. We're going to talk about the films of 2022. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And like I said, we are doing a end of the year best of. This is kind of a bonus intermission in between our next episodes of Lionsgate. But we will be talking about our top 10s, our honorable mentions first, and then our top 10s, and then what we're looking forward to in 2023. Just before we get into honorable mentions from all three of us, what did we think this year as a whole, as opposed to 2021, or just in general? What do you think it was as far as a good movie year or bad movie year or what?
I am of the mind that you need to just... It's so complicated, especially now with the pandemic, where I'm just like, every year I'm like, you just have to look a little harder. And I will admit, I live in Boston, so and I work at a fucking nonprofit art house theater. So it's much easier for me to get access to certain things, that a lot of people do not have access towards, and I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, so I am very, very, very privileged and also very lucky to be able to have access to many things that have been released throughout the year. I spent most of this year, I want to say 3/4 of the year, being like, yeah, this isn't as good of a year as last year, and then when we came to assembling my top 10 and even my honorable mentions, I was like, oh fuck, like there were good things. There were a lot of good things. So yeah, I always think that there's even in the roughest of years, there's always, certain gems that are worth seeking out. Even, and what I liked about this year was, I feel like, while most of my top 10 films are more smaller independent films, I think in terms of like wide releases or films that are getting the most acclaim this award season, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see nearly as much as either of you, I don't think, especially because I think it was exacerbated by the fact that I didn't start going back to theaters until like October. So like I have not really seen that much in theaters, and that's like that when you go to the theater, I think you're pushed to see more stuff and everything. Whereas like if you're looking at just what's on streaming, it's like, I don't know, do I really want to watch, like, I don't fucking know. I'm trying to think of, like, a random... I mean, I watch a lot of bullshit on the streaming. Like, I watched, like, Crush or The Requiem or something like that. It's like, these are not sterling movies or anything. Yeah, no, I'm happy with my top 10, which we'll get into, of course. And I feel like if I can at least have, like, a top 10 where it's, like, pretty good to great movies on there, I think that's, like, a pretty decent year. And also, like, it might just be my personal taste making. Again, I only saw like maybe 52 movies in total from this year, but there are not like a lot of movies that like make me want to blow my head off in this year. Like the worst it got for the most part was like 2 stars or whatever. Like there were movies I was like, oh, this is just kind of nothing. But for the most part, outright stinkers were mostly not on the list, which is nice. And even like some of the movies that I don't really like that were kind of in the 2.5 star range, like there's still interesting stuff in a lot of movies, which is nice. And I'm looking forward to talking about the ones that really were worth my while. Yeah. Also sounds like there was a lot of stuff that I didn't get to. Like I didn't get to see
Decision to Leave? Did you see that?
I did see that.
Okay.
I didn't see like Stars at Noon, the Claire Denis movie, which got like really good reviews once it was out of festival.
We might be talking about that one later.
Yeah, I've heard it's very good. Yeah, some people in this chat have told me it's good. Yeah. But that was one I just didn't see because like it was like in theaters for a week, and then I was too lazy to rent it on demand. But yeah,
prices for on-demand stuff though is also gone up, especially over the past 2 years.
Oh yeah, it's fucking wild. I mean, that was not one of the ones where they're like committing highway robbery, but it was wild. Where like Bones and All, I saw that like on the last day it was in theaters, and then like I was thinking this seems like a wiser decision to see in theaters because I had to pay like maybe $13 to see it in theaters. Whereas like if I'm legally renting it off of like Cineplex or something, it's like $24. I'm like, no fucking way I'm paying that much money.
Jesus.
Like,
No.
are you serious?
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it that's the other complicated thing is if you have a group of 3 or 4 people and you want to rent that, then financially that makes sense. But if it's just you, then it's like, well, no.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, that's like the thing that my parents would say, like, well, it's like that price is like what they're charging for what you see with your family. It's like, yeah, but that's like making the assumption that I'm watching with other people. I said I'm watching it by myself on my laptop.
Tog, by myself, it's 2 a.m. If I told other people to come over and pitch in $6, they'd fight me.
There is one film on my top 10 that I spent $20 on, only because I didn't know how quickly the price would A, go down, and B, how much access I would have had to it. And I live in, a major city and still didn't have access to it in theatrically, which is telling, which is pretty sad. But
You spent $20 on the Batman? That's ridiculous.
no, I went into my place of employment to see the Batman, was like, hi, and then I'll clean the theater up, and then saw it and was like, but no, again, I have been very, very fortunate for most of the films that I've seen to have had access to them, and know that a lot of places throughout the country and throughout, frankly, the world, that like a lot of the distribution is unfortunately very limited for some of these things, and I think that's a little sad, and I wish people had more access to certain things for lower prices, and just had more accessibility to some of these things in general. And I guess that's the one very bittersweet takeaway for me, is that some of the films on my top 10 are harder to access, and I am very aware of that. But when they come to wherever you are in the world, they are absolutely worth seeking out. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents.
Other point too that's like worth mentioning is how sometimes like the marketing, like the streaming services that have these movies like don't do a good job of marketing their movies. Like the fact that there was a new Richard Linklater movie that came out this year on Netflix and people like barely talked about it. Like,
That thing came out in March, and Netflix buried that thing so hard that I didn't even that's on me that I didn't even watch it. But I feel like that Apollo 10.5, I feel bad that I didn't even get around to watching that. And I love Linklater, at least most of the time. So that's another thing, is like it all depends on what is being highly promoted, what the type of what type of films are getting the biggest spotlight in certain cases, which is also kind of sad, especially considering the sad state of the theatrical experience as of now. So
Yeah, I would say this year was like 30 times better than last year.
Wow.
I think last year, if I tried to do a top 10, there would be like a few movies I gave like 3 out of 5 on. But this year, I could do like a top 25, and they would be like 3.5 and up. It was good. And also horror movies this year were so good. It was so surprising.
It was a good year for horror, absolutely.
But anything else about this year in general before we dive into our honorable mentions?
it was good to be back at the movies. I'd forgotten how much. Well, I was worried about it not being the same, like with like the COVID restrictions and everything, and like those being in place and everything. I was worried it was not going to be the same magic, and I was kind of surprised by how quickly I was able to sort of get over it. Even though my mask has like fog up my glasses sometimes, as someone who has to wear glasses for every day, I was like, I'd like move my head and be like, fuck, damn it, now like now it's like now I can't see and everything. But it's but no, like I was. It was very nice to get back to that and like have something to look forward to at like the end of the week. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, the first.
Somebody photoshopped Bryden's head on Tom Cruise in front of the Tenet poster saying "Back to the movies." That was me, except it was a escape room too. I was just like, oh, it feels good to be back.
Yeah, my first movie back was last year. I remember I saw the Taylor Sheridan film Those Who Wish Me Dead, and it's a very like fine movie, but I remember that being the first theatrical experience I had, and like in the first 2 minutes of that thing, a whole house blows up, and I was like, more! Like
They did it! I can't believe they did it!
yeah.
All right, let's do honorable mentions. Fuck it, I'll go first. Honorable mentions, I have 6. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I am so surprised that I actually liked, because I think I like maybe 3 out of like the 8 movies in the series, and the 5 that I dislike, I like vehemently hate. So I definitely went into this one being like, oh, this is going to be garbage. The trailer's garbage. I'm just going to hate watch this. And it was a lot of fun. It was like, 90 minutes? It was the main problem from the I think it was like the second trailer that they bring back Sally from the first one. I was like, are they really doing the fucking Halloween reboot shit with this? And then, spoiler alert, she dies like 2 minutes into it. So it's just like, yeah, fuck that. We're not doing that shit. So that kicks ass. But yeah, that was a good one. Deadstream, which was a Shudder movie. It was a live stream, like a YouTuber spends the night in like a haunted house and whatnot, and it's like, it sounds like a hard bargain, and it's not as good, but it's like if Evil Dead was live streamed, because it just has that comedy and the grotesqueness of Evil Dead. It's really fun. And then the couple that wrote and directed that, they also had a short on VHS 99, which is another honorable mention, which kicks ass. Ever since they rebooted the VHS series, it's just been a lot of fun. Like 94 was a lot of fun, and 99 was just so much better.
I saw that one as part of my catch up. I was not super positive on it, but I did like the Johan Roberts one where it's the girl buried inside the coffin. That was really
that one's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, the directors behind Deadstream, they did the last one where the guys go into hell. I thought that
one's like almost there for me. I did like some of the imagery in that. Yeah.
Okay, but what did you think of the Flying Lotus one?
Hated it. Terrible.
Oh, it was fucking awesome.
It goes on way too long. Like, especially
it is
the
very
early
long
setup, and then like I just feel like this is just like putting me through the muck for like no real reason, and it's just bumming me out more than actually scaring me.
What was the Flying Lotus? I know this is going off.
It was the game show one.
Oh, I didn't watch any of. I didn't watch it, but what was the fucking Flying Lotus movie that was discussed? Oh, Kuso. Have any of you seen Kuso?
No,
yeah,
and I don't want to.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's one of the most nauseating things I've ever seen.
Yeah. What were the other two? The first one was like the punk band.
That one's boring.
That one sucked. Yeah.
And then there was the one with the webcam, where it's like the horny kids who are like putting the webcam in
with the succubus? Yeah. I think that was kind of cool. That was kind of cool. But yeah, like the last one and the coffin one and the Flying Lotus one, I was on board. But it's just also fun that these, this is what the original VHSs did, except these were a lot better. It's just like, look at these new people in horror, and then I'm, especially with the Deadstream people, like that couple, they're just doing wild shit that I really like. Next one on the list is Everything Everywhere All at Once. You've heard about it. I don't want to hear about it ever again, but I really liked it. Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. Hell yeah, our boys are back and they're better than ever.
With white privilege.
And the new season, just fucking great. And then lastly, Sharp Stick, which I really dug.
Oh, yeah. Bernthal would be on my list of like favorite supporting performances in that. He's great in that.
Yeah. Yes. Who's my man from Felicity? Scott Speedman that's in that? Yeah. Playing the nice porn star? Yeah. Charlie, honorable mentions. What do you got?
So I have quite a few, and I want to say right off the bat, I'm even limiting my honorable mentions. Like I said, I spent most of this year being like, this isn't like as good as last year. And then when it came to just constructing a list, even with honorable mentions, I was like, fuck, do I have to leave this off? But I will start with one that I think we're going to hear more about, because I think this is on one of our lists, or one of your lists. Kimmy, the Steven Soderbergh.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
With Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah.
I think I love Steven Soderbergh. I think this is probably my favorite thing he's done since Side Effects. And I like all of his movies, but this one I was thinking just a very tight thriller with an incredible performance by Zoe Kravitz. Our friend of the pod and Mitchell Beaupree. wrote an amazing piece for, I believe it was the Film Stage, about Zoe Kravitz's performance.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible piece of acting. Absolutely worth checking out our friend's piece on the performance and why it is so great. We're all going to the World's Fair. A film that I was told going in was deeply scary, and what I found to be haunting about it was just how vulnerable and sad and empathetic it was towards someone who feels isolated from the rest of the world and lives in a part of the country where there is nothing to do but escape to the internet, and is not even condescending, because I was worried about the potential the internet is a horrible, horrible place commentary that is so tired and so, frankly, monotonous. And actually, just watching that late at night in my own home just haunted me. And I think Anna Cobb's performance is also incredible.
She's so good.
She's so unbelievably raw, and it really took me aback just how much that movie has stuck with me throughout the year. The controversial, I would say, universally beloved but controversial Tar, I also think is great. I think there's a really great episode that the Film Comment released, the Film Comment podcast released recently, which was called Tar Wars, where they had two film critics, and I'm forgetting their names at the moment, but they had one person who was like, Tar is brilliant, and they had one person who hated it, and they were like, now fight. And it really opened my eyes into appreciating just the various contradictions and complexities of that film. I don't think it's perfect. I think there are certain things that are rough around the edges, but I think Cate Blanchett is just, you can't take her eyes off of her. And I think in terms of the messiness of it, and as a commentary on how we analyze art in contemporary society and how we deal with problematic artists in particular, I found to be really, really fascinating. And it has a very divisive ending that has stuck with me all year round that I don't think we have time to get into. But yeah, check that one out. Jackass Forever. Probably
Honorable mentions. Go to hell. No, I'm funny. I did want to interject that we're all going to the World's Fair. I saw that in 2021, like late 2021.
Oh, okay.
I was able to like rent it from Outfest, so that's one of my favorites of last year. But technically, yes, it did come out this year.
I also want to interject, Charlie. I looked up the Film Comment podcast episode. It is Jessica Kang and Nathan Lee who were on the episode to debate the film.
Yes.
Just wanted to give that as a reference.
Yes,
There
thank
you go.
you. Thank you. I should have done my homework in terms
Oh,
of
so good.
referencing them, because they do a great job of defending and opposing the film in one of the most, that is certainly one of the most provocative episodes of podcasting I've heard on film this year. Of a film I really liked, and to be fair, Jessica Kang gets pretty ganged up on in this episode. But what I like is that they're like, no, she can hold her own, and she does. And it opened my eyes into viewing the film as someone who really, really, really liked it. Why certain people were not as taken with it as she was, but I think that it is one of the films this year that is most worth arguing about. Jackass Forever, you know what you're getting in for.
Hell yes, our boys are back.
One of the best theater-going experiences I had this year was seeing it with a bunch of people, and also one of the few films where you want audience participation in it, because if you just see Jackass Forever with a bunch of people who are silent, it's just kind of awkward. And here it was like you looked forward to audience participation, and I think that it's such, it's a blast, and it is so art. Fun. It's avant-garde if you really want to look at it that way. I mean, who the fuck puts their bodies on display for art in such a unique, disgusting way? Nope, which I have seen 3 times now.
God damn.
I liked it the first time I saw it, but it was like, I don't know if this is something that holds together all that well. And then I saw it with my roommate in IMAX and a couple of friends, and then we couldn't stop talking about it. And the more we talked about it, the more we were like, oh wait, these sequences actually do gel together, and it actually is a really great commentary on how Hollywood chews and spits people out especially people of color, which I like that the commentaries in that film are both not, they're simultaneously subtle and very blunt at the same time, and yet people are still debating that one. Love that one. EO,
I want to see the damn donkey.
Oh, it's so good. Ahazard Balthazard on Ecstasy, and it's really, really great. Yeah, one of the best shot films of the year. A film that is also, as the people mentioned, made for out of love for animals. Not this is not a film about animal cruelty or anyway. And it's also just what a ride, what an unpredictable ride. Where I was devastated in one scene and then laughing in others. And at one point, I watched this film by myself, and I even said "Holy shit" out loud to myself in my room. So definitely check that one out. Banshees of Inisherin. A film that it's funny until it's not adding anything new here, but possibly Martin McDonagh's best film, and I really like In Bruges, but
probably. I haven't seen In Bruges, but it's definitely my favorite of his so far.
Oh, Kevin, I think you'd love In Bruges.
I need to rewatch that one. I haven't seen it since high school.
Yeah. Colin Farrell having a great year. He's incredible. And the one that nearly cracked my top 10, because I have to be honest, it's a film that I was shocked by how much I loved, and I went to the theater and was like, let's see how this turns out, and I was like, shit, I think I love this. Ambulance by Michael Bay.
I gotta watch it.
Look, I have hated so many Michael Bay films, and this one fires on all cylinders. If you are not in the Bay tank, which I am not, but I know a lot of people are like, I'm still not in the Bay tank. I don't get what people are talking about with this. It feels like almost a beautiful accident that this very conservative filmmaker made a film that was relevant about the healthcare system and veterans and people of color getting sideswiped into what is essentially, it is a 2-hour plus chase sequence that I know it's insane, but like it has arguably my favorite cinematography of the year, with him discovering drones. I'm forgetting his name. Just a sec. Let me find him. Please don't put this in the episode. Roberto De Angelis does the cinematography. He worked with Agnes Varda on Faces Places. It is propulsive, deeply stupid, but also just electrifying cinema. And I know that was like, again, well, like I said at the beginning, I'm sorry for hogging the honorable mentions thing, but like I said, I could have made a whole list with my honorable mentions. And, yeah, so I do think it was a good year at the movies, just by that standpoint alone. So
hell yeah. Bryden, honorable mentions. What do you got?
Yeah, I wrote down some of these because I wanted to, because some of these I forgot details of them, and I wanted to.
Oh, wait. We gotta know everybody's opinion on Seven Psychopaths. That's what I was gonna.
We'll do that when we talk about CBS films.
Oh, okay.
I it's fine. I haven't seen it since theaters.
That felt like a movie at my age when I was like, I don't know, probably like 18. That I was like, oh man, it's gonna kick ass. And then afterwards, I was like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I do need to watch In Bruges. Like after I watched Banshees, I was like, fuck, I need to. I know that's such a big one that I haven't seen, but yeah, Colin Farrell is hilarious in Banshees, so I'm expecting him to be very funny in Bruges.
And he's very funny in Bruges, and it has the same type of, without spoiling anything, I think In Bruges has the same type of structure of like, it's very darkly funny until it's not. So
it alternates. It depends on the scene. It'll like throw you off where it'll be like really fun and then like really sad and then be really funny again. I don't know. I like that it keeps you off guard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, Daredevil opinions. What do we get? No, I'm kidding. Bryden, honorable mentions.
Yeah. So I'll rattle through this. I really liked. I liked Beast, the Balthazar Kormaker Idris Elba fights a lion movie. Really effective usage of the stitch together long takes gimmick, which I know some people like roll their eyes at, but I think it works out because it's less about showing off the technical prowess and more about sustaining the tension.
Yeah, I have a stitched together one take movie we're going to be talking about later. So if done well, it's brilliant.
Yeah, so. And Elba and the kid actors, like sometimes there's some boilerplate stuff where it's like, you're not there for me when like, our mom has died or something like that. But like that kind of stuff that's like roll your eyes at. But like
kid, we're dealing with a lion.
Yeah.
Fuck all that.
Yeah. There's like a real lived in rapport and they don't like linger on that stuff too much. And like, keeping the narrative momentum going by like frequently giving them new mini obstacles for them to overcome. Like there's like a really tense scene where Idris Elba like has to like get like a tranquilizer gun and he has to like wrestle it away from the lion. He's like ducking under different parts of the car to get it. And
is it basically Cujo but with a lion?
I have not seen Cujo, but I know that that's like a big part of Cujo, and it sounds like that's it is
Pretty much
basically
stuck in a car. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, like it's definitely silly, but like it delivers on the spectacle, and Elba's like a really believably weary and humane lead in it, and it just like it works, and it's like 90 minutes long. It's like just does what it says in the tin. Smile, which I thought was quite good.
Oh yeah.
You know, even as the narrative like borders on bad taste and being like really risible, especially with regards to mental illness and possibly like demonizing mental illness, literally. I think the movie is like really strongly directed and well acted. I mean, Sosie Bacon, you know, she's like just a total raw nerve of a performance. You know,
she's great. Yeah.
Yeah, like and really unexpectedly sensitive in certain parts. I mean, you know, that's like kind of contradicting like the tastelessness of it, but like, you know, it's like kind of adding to like the knife twist nature of some of the scares in the movie. There's like a moment where you're introduced to a character played by Judy Reyes, whose husband is like was a victim of the curse, and where like, you know, when you smile at someone, you like then kill yourself like 7 days later. It's kind of like The Ring. But like, and the camera starts out by showing her husband in family photos on a table, and she starts talking about him and like how she'd never heard him scream before, and like you do get like this picture that's very humane of this guy, and then Parker Finn, you know, and like what a debut as just a director. He like twists a knife by like cutting to a photo of like his mangled face in like a photo, like post what happened to him with like a hammer or something. It's like it really like kind of throws you off in a way that like I like is very nasty, but also like just on a pacing level is like really good. And yeah, really good use of sound too. I really like the birthday party scene where she gives a gift to the kid and the sound drops out as you're like thinking, oh shit, something bad's gonna happen, and you see what the reveal is, and it's like, yikes. Yeah, I there's like definitely things in it that don't work. Like I hate the ironic needle drop that plays the end credits, but I do
lollipop, lollipopo, lolly lolly.
Terrible.
Lollipop, lollipopo.
Yeah, but great score too. I really liked the score.
Good score.
Yeah, and
speaking of scores, it was Bodies, 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 the score by Disaster Piece. I was like, this score kicks ass.
Really
I wish it was in a better movie.
I like that movie fine, but yeah, the score is definitely on highlights. Yeah, so Smile was really good. No Exit, that was one that was like a Hulu movie. That one's based on a book, which is like makes sense because it has kind of the feel of like a mystery where each chapter ends with like a new twist or like, you know, kind of new reveal, and like that makes you want to keep like turning the pages and reading to find out what happens next. And the movie kind of has that approach too, where like the first half hour you think like, holy shit, this movie's peaked with this twist, what's happening? And then it keeps going and revealing more stuff. Really good lived-in performances. Dennis Haysbert and Dale Dickey have like a nice like chemistry as a couple with like sort of a messed up history with their marriage. And like really steadily builds to the grisly violence. Like there's some like really gnarly nail gun shit that happens in the last 30 minutes. Yeah, just like a lean, cleanly shot and edited thriller that like gets in and out and does the job. Really like that one. And then I Want You Back, the rom-com with Jason, not Jason. The director's Jason Orley, who did Big Time Adolescence, and it's got Charlie Day and Jenny Slate conspiring to break up their exes with their new couples, with their new partners. Yeah,
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, it came out on Amazon at like in February, I think. It kind of has like a weirdly similar premise to Ticket to Paradise, which is also the George Clooney, Julia Roberts rom-com, which is also about like we're gonna try to break this couple up for our own selfish purposes. But whereas that movie doesn't really follow through with its mean-spirited premise and also isn't very funny, this one does believably like convey like sort of the saddening fallout that comes from like enacting this plan. Like you kind of like the people that they're trying to break up, but also like a lot of humor is run out of it because Charlie Day and Jenny Slate are very funny performers, whether they're like just howlingly needy or like, you know, being like genuinely nice to each other, and like they're very funny. And Jason Orley, you know, I liked his previous movie Big Time Adolescence, as I said, and he has a really good feel for the romantic comedy vibe. I think he was like an assistant to Nancy Meyers, I heard, at one point. And
I can see that.
Yeah, and some of the needle drops, you know, at one point they play a song by Jimmy Durant, which feels like something out of a Nora Ephron movie. And he always like knows how to end the scene on the right button, like just like in terms of punchlines. So yeah, just like a totally rock solid romantic comedy. Would highly recommend that for fans of the genre. And last honorable mention, Dog, the directorial debut of Channing Tatum and Reed
Dog!
Carolyn.
I missed it.
It's really charming. I mean, when I saw the trailer, I was kind of rolling my eyes where, you see Wacky Dog hijinks soundtrack to Beast of Burden. Do you get it? Do you get it?
But it's a dog. Hell yeah. Why haven't I seen this? This is made for me.
But the actual film is, a lot darker, but also more compassionate than something like, the Marmaduke movie-esque movie that it looks like it's going to be in the trailer. Because
it's darker?
Yeah.
Does, the dog get, canceled, or
no?
What's going on?
Yes, the dog's name is Tar. But
yeah,
exactly.
But the
dog won an EGOT, and now it's getting canceled.
It had some tweets.
Yeah.
But the central premise of the movie is Channing Tatum has to deliver a military dog to a funeral of a veteran who committed suicide. And the movie is very frank about dealing with Channing Tatum's character having PTSD and that keeping him from going back to active duty. And I think there is a humanity to the movie that is really admirable. There's a key moment where they go to get Channing Tatum's stuff that's been stolen by a homeless person, and he's wearing an army jacket, and Channing Tatum thinks that he's doing stolen valor, he wasn't actually in the army. And the scene it ends with voiceover carrying into the next scene or whatever, but you stay with that character who's rambling incoherently, and the movie seems to have real empathy for that guy who is maybe he's from the army or maybe he's not, but he's going through something. And then there's dialogue about how you could easily have been this, Channing Tatum or Ethan Suplee, who are veterans in the movie. They could have easily been that person if they had not gotten the help that they needed. So I don't know. It's really I like that the movie has those grace notes in there with the side characters, but it also works wonderfully as just a lighthearted road movie too. You got people like Kevin Nash and Jane Addams popping up as a pot growing couple.
Jane Addams,
Big Papa Kevin Nash is in this.
Yeah, and the way that, and Tatum is good with actors where he, and as a lead too, he just immediately has chemistry with them, and it's just I could easily watch a whole movie where it's just them hanging out. So yeah, really, really charming. I think that's streaming on Amazon Prime now, or at least it is in Canada, if people want to check that out. But yeah, those are. I hope I didn't take up too much time. Those are my honorable mentions of some things I liked from this year.
Certainly did not take up as much time as me, so you're fine.
Listen, honorable mentions. We got dogs. We got lions. I don't have any. Well, I did see Gigi Allen, which has a very cute monkey in it, but it's not good.
You made that sound like you saw Gigi Allen, as if it was about the punk musician.
You won't believe what he does. No, okay, nope. Isn't that no? It's Gigi and Nate. My bad. Sorry. Todd Phillips is on my brain. No. I will watch that documentary, but okay. All the honorable mentions are done. Let's start off with number 10 on our top 10s. I will go first just to throw the chaos all in order. My number 10 is Orphan First Kill, directed by William Brent Bell. This movie fucking rips. I was a little I was a bit hesitant because when it finally got announced, because I feel like they've been talking about a prequel for forever, and then it was oh, it's announced and it's going to Paramount Plus or whatever. It did eventually go to theaters, but hearing that, and then the director is, I think it's the guy who did Portrait,
just The Devil Inside, your favorite movie.
Oh God. Wow. Yeah. So he's done nothing good. So I was not expecting this to be good. And we were talking off mic. There is a moment where it's good up until this point, but then something happens with one of the characters about 40 minutes in, and I was just oh, this movie's bad shit, and I'm having a great time. Julia Stiles, so glad she's back.
Glad she's back.
Yeah. Because she was in Hustlers as a little lesser role, but this is one of the leads. So what else has she been in?
Well, she fully is able to utilize a role, because I liked Hustlers too, but Hustlers, she's kind of just there to listen. Yep. She isn't really. She's more receptive to everything that's going on in the movie from our unreliable narrator's point of view. I haven't seen Hustlers in a very long time, or by very long time I mean it's been a while, and I saw it before the pandemic began.
Kevin and Charlie,
Right.
how dare you not acknowledge the Neil Jordan created series Riviera, starring Julia Stiles and Anthony LaPaglia, which ran for 3 seasons on Sky Atlantic. I read this off the
Sky
Wikipedia.
Atlantic. Wow. Well, I wonder what that was in the U.S., like Stars or Epics or some
Maybe
shit.
Sundance Channel? I don't know.
Oh, that'd be sad.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Julia Stiles gives one of the most batshit performances of the year in this movie. And while I will admit it's not in my honorable mentions or in my top 10, it's one of the most fun experiences I had. And I, like you, I was like, William Rent Bell, I haven't seen any of these movies that he's
Didn't
made.
he do the boy? Didn't he do that? Or did
I
he
think
do
he
Brahms
did.
the boy?
Might have done
Or-
both.
Yeah. He
Oh,
did
hell
both.
yeah.
But I've heard nothing but bad things about this guy, and I was just like, okay, well, because the first one's by John Colette Serra. Am I pronouncing his name right?
Tommy Collette Sarah? Yeah.
Yes. And the first one, I remember seeing it at drive-in on opening night, being like, is this really happening right now? This is insane. And remember thinking, well, what else are they going to bring to the table? And then this one, it's like, oh, okay. Like, one of the biggest surprises of the year for me.
Okay, Charlie, you're number 10.
My number 10 is RRR, or,
Yeah, I still haven't seen it.
Here's the thing about RRR is that it is, when you have had access to see it, there have been multitudes of conflicting things of, should I watch it this way? Is the aspect ratio right? Is the original language in this?
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough I went suit shopping at a mall in Massachusetts with my friend who was getting married at the time, and I had the day off, and it just was a stroke of luck that I was able to see it frankly in AMC, but was still projected right in the original language, which is Telugu. The RRR, by the way, stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt, and there have been some conflicting pieces that about its politics, I will just say, and I will also lay my own feet to the fire and say I am terrible when it comes to watching Indian films. I will say this was kind of a gateway to me, but in terms of pure action spectacle, I hadn't seen anything like this. And I saw this at the beginning of the year, around like late March, early April, and it's 3 hours long, dance sequences, musical numbers, and lots of incredible sequences of just like it kind of basically made me go, oh, this is what I'm missing in action movies right now, which are strong bonds between characters, in this case 2 male characters who are on opposing sides of a revolution that's happening in India in the 1920s. Just the extras, the scale and how it uses those extras, just the way in which it uses and mixes practical effects with CGI, which even when you can tell that something is computer generated in this film, it doesn't matter. It's so exhilarating to watch. And I know I am far from an expert on Indian films and the politics behind it. And I do want to say that I know there have been some pieces that have talked about it at length that I would recommend that you go read before seeing this. But as pure cinematic spectacle, it's tough to beat this thing this year. I mean, it's just a marvel. It's unbelievable what they are able to concoct into just creating pure escapism at the movies. And I saw it by myself, and then I work at the Coolidge Corner Theater, as if, take a drink if you haven't heard me say that before. I saw it, and I myself was like, yes, but then we had a special screening for it at our theater a night that I worked, and I was like, well, I'll work, I saw this before, and we had it in the theater upstairs, and where I work, our concession stand is downstairs, and the theater it was showing in was upstairs, and we could hear cheers just echoing throughout the theater, and I work there 4 to 5 days every week. I have never, even like I've worked there 5 years. It's been, I can count the number of times on one hand how many times I've heard cheering coming from a movie that's not playing at midnight, and like people were going nuts for this thing, which is not to say we're reviewing audiences. We're not. This is my list, but I will say that it really does, and just hearing that was my internal feeling I had watching this thing the entire time, where I think it's just incredibly well choreographed, rousing, just unbelievable action filmmaking. And I have to say, just in terms of in that genre, probably my favorite film of that year, in terms of like if you're seeking that type of thrill, it's just remarkable. So yeah, that's my number 10.
I can't wait to be doing the same thing as far as cheering and whatnot during the screening of EO. Oh, it's gonna kick ass!
I will
Look at that donkey! Whoa!
You'll do the Freddie Mercury thing. EO.
Someone actually,
Sir, shut up!
I was at work earlier today, and someone came up and were like, "Can I have a ticket for AO?" I was like, wrong vowel, but you're close.
Oh, that's great.
Bryden, you're number 10.
Yeah, my number 10 is, I mean, this is a movie I'm sort of turned over in my head a number of times, talked about with other people about the flaws and the virtues of it, but it's stuck in my head. Armageddon Time by James Gray.
Oh, I missed this one.
Same.
I've been.
It happens.
I don't think I've seen any James Gray movie,
Ooh.
honestly.
Oh.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Two Lovers is my favorite that I've seen so far.
And I haven't seen that one
say.
either, and I've heard from multiple people, Bryden, that is his best one. And for whatever reason, I've seen a bunch of his films, but that missed me. But anyway,
isn't that one? I think that's like one of those. It's just like this movie fucking ends you after you watch it type of movie.
Yeah, but he also breakdances to Moby in it, Joaquin Phoenix, so that's pretty
Okay,
cool.
I'll watch it.
yeah, Jesus.
Yeah.
Fine, you've sold us. God, go on.
So Armageddon Time, it's a much tougher film, I think, than some critics are giving it credit for. Like, I saw one person say, like, it's a movie where James Gray is like, oh, I was the one who walked out of Fred Trump's speech at my school or whatever. And it's like, I don't think the movie is that triumphant. I think it's a movie about the character learning about how unfair the world is, trying to do the right thing, and then still getting squashed by it. Like, it's ineffective still. I think like the final scene is, without giving away too much about it, it's uncertain at best. Where the bleakness of like what has happened in the movie is still haunting the lead character. And I think, I struggled a little bit with the child performances at the start. It's Banks Arpetta and Jalen Webb, I think, are the leads. But I think sort of like their halting, awkward line deliveries help. Because it's a movie about kids who are still finding their place in the world. And being kind of bummed out by what that place is in the world. Very sickly looking period detail, like a lot of dingy looking classrooms and gray police stations, that kind of fits the diseased worldview of the institutions that these characters are living in. Really, and as talking to some people who are maybe not as familiar with James, by the way, I haven't seen The Immigrant in Lost City Z, so I've still got some.
But have you seen The Yards?
Yes, I have. Good movie.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
I want to check that out.
It's funny that James Gray and Matt Reeves are friends because Matt Reeves like co-wrote The Yards and like their careers have just like completely diverged stylistically, totally.
Yeah, where's James Gray Cloverfield movie? I'd like to see that.
Hell yeah, I would love that. But it's really interesting how this movie fits into his filmography, where like we get like kind of he seems to have like a very ambivalent view about family loyalty, where it's like that's something that being loyal to your family could very well poison your soul. Like, just look at the conclusions of We Own the Night or Ad Astra or The Yards. There's like stuff in it that doesn't work. Like, there's some like fantasy sequences that don't entirely work. And I can also understand critiques that for people who don't know what the movie is about a white Jewish kid in the early 80s New York. He seems like he's a stand-in for young James Gray, who would have been that same age around the time, and his friendship with a young black kid in his classroom who seems to be getting kind of the short end of the stick of a lot of things, getting in trouble more in class and eventually having to evade child protective services when he no longer has anyone to take care of him. The movie, I understand the critique that he is somewhat underwritten, especially because the argument that the movie is taking place entirely from the Gray stand-in's perspective, that that you're getting just his view of this kid, but the movie does have like a very brief glimpse of the friend's home life, and that's like not something that the main character would be seeing. So it's like you think like, should the movie maybe be dividing its time a little bit more evenly between the two characters? That is totally fair, but I do think the movie is like not soft pedaling any of like the sort of hard edge lessons that the movie is giving. It is like, I think the movie really has like a lot of empathy for the friend that doesn't get the same opportunities that the main kid gets, and also like the movie acknowledges that there's a lot of discrimination that the main character gets as a Jewish kid. Where like he's asked about like why'd you change your name and everything to something that like it's like he says your name Graf, like it was originally Grafowitz or something. But then like also showing how they can be capable of prejudice too. And but I think it's a movie where there's a key line where Jeremy Strong is the dad, and Jeremy Strong I think is very good in the movie. He tells him like to never look back if he ever gets ahead in the world. And I think with this movie, it seems like James Gray is doing the exact opposite. He's like not forgetting like the sort of scars of this horrible history that the world has been through. Yeah, no, it's a really interesting movie, very interesting to mull over, even if it doesn't always work all the time. Yeah. I'll stop there.
My friend Keith Ulick, who gave it, I believe, 3.5 stars for Slant, or for Slate, excuse me, was like, you can't really describe. I have not seen this film, but he was like, you can't really describe why it's not a white savior film, but it isn't until you watch it. And I think, and that's what I'm getting from your review, or your summation of it right now, is that, and that's why it's been on my list for so long, and I feel so bad that I didn't get around to it before this episode, or even like just in general. Did I ever tell you that, speaking of James Gray films, We Own the Night was the first film that I ever reviewed for my high school newspaper?
Oh, hell yeah.
And I asked my mom to take me because I was not 17 at the time, and the first scene involves Joaquin Phoenix. Before there's even an exchange of dialogue, Joaquin Phoenix just does something sexual with Eva Mendes on the couch, and I remember just the discomfort of feeling like looking over to my mom and being like, it's for school. Like, so
gotta review this for the other kids that can't go and watch it.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say, I think that James Gray is a filmmaker who I deeply, deeply respect. I have not seen Two Lovers, but I have seen We Own the Night, The Immigrant, Lost City of Zed, Ad Astra. I have not seen this one. I always feel like I'm looking at a beautiful portrait, but I'm not immersed in it, which is probably why I haven't gotten to this one yet. But it based on your take and other people's takes, it's one that I definitely feel like I need to get around to very soon in order to have my own take on it, because James Gray, from everything I've seen, is an incredibly talented filmmaker, and I'm glad that it moved you so deeply, Brayden.
Yeah, I've had like good conversations. I mean, our friend Jack Draper, he saw it, and I had a really good conversation with him about it and talking about like the faults and virtues of it, and he likes the movie. But I've also read good writing by people who haven't liked the movie or mixed on it, at least. Like Adam Naiman, Odie Henderson, and Chaos and Collins wrote really well about the movie, and those are some good pieces to check out for people who have seen the movie. Yeah.
All right, number 9. My number 9 is Seeing Red, directed by Dami Shi. Oh. Don't have much to say other than this movie is extremely cute.
Is it? I'm sorry if I'm being an asshole. It's Turning Red, right? Yeah.
God damn it!
I mean, how much it would kick so much ass though if it was named after the Minor Threat song and that was like what it was about.
Yeah, Turning Red. I have been doing that all year. Okay. Yeah.
Why have you been seeing red like EO the donkey? Just Terminator vision? You've just been seeing red
I have not been
the
seeing
year of
EO,
2022.
No. Well, this is actually the sequel where she turns into a bull. Yeah. But yeah, this movie's adorable. I don't have much else to say. It's just so super cute.
It is. It is really cute. And I don't know why. I saw it earlier in the year. It's not on my top 10, but I will say it did make, for BAFTA, it made my animated films of the year list. And I don't know why it didn't get a theatrical release, because it just went straight to Disney Plus. And I know there were a few other films that were animated that did make it to theaters, and I don't know why Disney didn't take a gamble with this one. because
Yeah, I don't know.
I will say it was like a bit of a weird start, at least speaking for Canada. I don't know how different, I guess like people deal with COVID differently in like different parts of the world, but like theaters were closed for the first couple of months. I feel like the first couple in Canada, at least, like that's why like I didn't like the new Scream, I think, didn't make it to theaters like that because that came out back in January. So maybe that was like, maybe they were worried about like possibly a movie especially because it's by a Toronto filmmaker, set in Toronto explicitly. I say this to someone who has not seen the movie, so I'm being a bit of a jackass here talking about something I don't know. But like, I wonder if that was maybe the concern, that like they were worried about possible box office.
No, that's a really good point.
Brian, you say you haven't seen it, even though you're in the movie, which is wild. But yeah, I really dug it, and it's a funny thing. It's just like Pixar, as of now, has kind of lost its mojo for me. But like the directors they have that have been doing stuff at Pixar for like decades and whatnot. Like I really loved Soul, but like that's Pete Docter, so of course that's Wall-E, that's Finding Nemo guy. But with this one, this is the first time that she's made a Pixar movie. I'm pretty sure she made a short. But
Bao, the one with the dumpling, yeah.
Yeah, Bao's adorable too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was that one. But yeah, it's really good. This one doesn't go to theaters, but Lightyear does, and Tanks.
Yeah, and so did the one with Jake Gyllenhaal that just came out, where
Strange World.
Yeah,
I don't think that's Pixar. That's just Disney.
is that
but yeah,
just
that
Disney?
bombed.
That
Yeah,
also bombed. I mean, I will say too that there was a Pixar film, I'll just say it, it's Inside Out, where I was talking to someone who, and this was years ago when it came out, was just like, oh, is it a pair of mismatched friends who have to go on a journey to find out, like, you know, what it means to be human or whatever, or what their value in the world is? And it's like, well, I love Inside Out, but yes, it is that. And then, but Turning Red,
Don't
it's
mess with the formula if it works.
yeah,
shit.
but Turning Red doesn't use that formula. It's kind of someone just identifying with themselves and, you know, using, as you said, new setting, new. It's not white people. I mean, it's very tied to Asian culture. I mean, it's adorable, and it totally subverts all of the typical tropes that we usually expect from that type of story. So I don't know why. I mean, again, COVID's complicated everything, but yeah, it's a bummer that this one wasn't released theatrically. I'll just say that.
Yeah, Bryden, you're number 9.
Yeah, my number 9 is X by Ty West. I haven't seen Pearl, but like as it stands, I think this movie works totally fine on its own. Some people have called it ageist. I know some people in our friend group who do not like this movie because I guess the villains in the movie are too beauty obsessed, visibly wrinkled elderly people. But I think if anything, it's more about how being so looks focused at the expense of other things can be destructive. And you know, I think like the movie is complicated, I think, by the scene where, you know, the two killers have sex in the middle of their killing spree. They stop to like talk about how, like, you know, the husband says, "I think you look more beautiful than you ever did," or whatever. And it's like, it's disturbing because it's taking place in the middle of all this bloodshed, and there's like someone hiding under the bed, not wanting to be a witness to this. But then it is also taking it, I think, as a very earnest declaration of love between these two very sick people. You know, sick in the sense that they are killers. So I think that's like a thing that complicates that critique of the movie. Also think it's really interesting as, you know, we've had, you know, mainstream movies that depict like the porn industry, you know, like Boogie Nights, but I like how there's something very matter of fact to the way that these characters go about the business. I think there's like a scene where like after a scene has been shot, like Britney still like wipes herself off, and it's like, wow, that is like, I kind of like to throw that lived in detail to it. And you know, there's like, I like hanging out with like the characters when they're like saying landslide to each other. It kind of makes it seems something out of House of the Devil, which like a lot of that movie, that's one of Ty West's earlier movies, and that there's like, that's another movie where like a lot of it is just following the main character around as they just sort of like do ordinary stuff around the house. And it's very compelling to watch because the lead in that movie is compelling, just as the lead actors and acts are very compelling. But also there's like the lingering sense that something very uneasy could happen at like any possible moment. And I think West is very good at that. And the horror scenes have very nasty payoffs. You know, like the character getting shotgunned so hard that they fly out of frame. Or the character getting their head bitten off by an alligator. It totally works. It's just like on a thrills level as a horror movie. So lots of fun with that one.
Hell yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, Bryden. I like this movie a lot. I I will not disagree per se. Like, everyone who's saying that this film is ageist, I think they have very sincere arguments against it, and it's out of concern, and I don't want to negate that in any way, because I can totally see where they're coming from. At the same time, I think that what's kind of ingenious about this movie is that it is a period piece that's also talking about older generations dealing with sexual frankness and setting it in the past. And I think there are some... And I think it's critical towards the younger group for being like, well, we're young and we like to fuck, and that's just, they just don't want to see that. But they don't want to see elderly people fuck at the same time, who have just as big of a sexual appetite, to go with what you're saying about the sex scene between the two killers. I think that there's a split screen sequence in this film that is deeply empathetic, and also a scene set against, I won't spoil it, but a kill scene set to Don't Fear the Reaper, which
kicks ass.
Ass, and could be so on the nose. I can understand that people roll their eyes at that and be like, ugh, obvious. But I found it deeply moving and empathetic, and I also think that film... I think that the film is tackling this and generational divide by setting it in the past, if that makes any sense. Where
totally.
The characters themselves are ageist, in my opinion. It's just like, we're young and we like to fuck, and they're uncomfortable with that. Kind of like how every generation is kind of uncomfortable with whatever younger generation sexuality and new openness to sexuality is, if that makes any sense.
And even the characters who are like supposed to be very enlightened about sex, like they have their own like traditional hangups. Like the director who like doesn't want like his girlfriend acting in the movie and everything. He's like, you gotta back me up in here, bro. Like, stop this from happening. And like the guy's like, hey man, like it's gonna happen. Like, you know, don't get so hung up about it. It's Martin Henderson who's wonderful in the movie. Yeah.
You'd also think in another...
Oh yeah, my man from The Ring. Yeah, I remember when I first watched it, I was just like, who is that guy? And I was like, oh, yeah, it's a motherfucker from The Ring. How's it going?
Martin Henderson. I'm glad that they cast him, too, because I think he's great in The Ring. I know he was in Torque. I haven't seen Torque. But he kind of fell off the map.
You ain't seen Torque?
I have not seen Torque.
That's a LimeWire classic.
I remember I wanted to see Torque, and it was during one of the few days that we were told to stay, like, school was canceled because it was too cold. I was like, Mom, can I go see Torque? And they were like, absolutely not. You can't go to school. You can't go see Torque.
Can I at least go see Biker Boys?
Yeah. I think that was the same year, too.
Maybe if a year apart at most. Yeah.
Which one had... one had Ice Cube, one had Kid Rock. We all remember.
Yeah. But I do think there is something about that film's like calling you about your own appetites, sexual appetites, because like we don't go onto these types of sites or watch adult films about like elderly people like wanting to, you know, like I think
Speak for yourself.
Okay. We all know what Kevin's fetishes are now. I'm kidding.
I would say that yes, it's easy to understand where people are coming from that, and yes, that is an annoying trope in horror movies where it's just like, it's scary because she's old, or like, what? I mean, I had the same issue with Barbarian, where it's just like,
no,
yeah, she's scary because she's an old naked lady.
Exactly, but I don't think Barbarian says self-aware about this or gives the character as much empathy as this, and it's a complicated type of empathy because the older person in this movie, or elderly people, are complicit in multiple murders. But I also think it subverts a lot of other tropes, like the character who doesn't want to be a part of a porno picture, who is dating the director, and you'd think in another movie it would be all about her, and then it subverts expectations about her character and what happens to her, and instead deals with, I'd argue, a less sympathetic character who's just like, I want to be famous, and this is how I rise to fame. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. We will be talking about that again later on my list. Let's see. Charlie, did you give your number 9?
I did not. I'm sorry. My number 9 is Stars at Noon by one of my favorite filmmakers, Claire Denis. She had quite a year with this and Both Sides of the Blade, which just missed my honorable mentions. I think Both Sides of the Blade is also great. Stars at Noon stars Margaret Qualley as a journalist in Nicaragua. It takes place during the present day, during the pandemic, and she's trapped, and she's stuck in this in a country that is not her own, and she has her credentials stripped. She doesn't know what she's doing anymore in terms of her in terms of what her job title stands for. She claims, in what I think is a revealing scene, I wanted to know the dimensions of hell. And I think that Claire Denis is a master at depicting very complicit sides of white privilege in countries where they don't belong. And I think that Stars at Noon does a very good job of giving you empathy for this character who is also not a part of this country. And ultimately, Joe Alwyn, who from Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, people probably know him as Mr. Taylor Swift, dating Taylor Swift. She, who was initially supposed to be cast by Robert Pattinson, and then that went to Taron Egerton from the Kingsman series, and then it landed in Joe Alwyn's lap. I think if it was with Robert Pattinson, this film would almost be unbearably sexy. But Joe Alwyn is also, even though I don't think he's the strongest actor, I listened to Linoleum Knife's podcast talk about this film, and they perfectly described him as a glass of milk that Claire Denis can utilize perfectly, because what it comes down to is everything from her perspective is transactional in order to get what she wants. They find out that for reasons unbeknownst to her, government agencies are after him. She doesn't really know why, but she's sexually attracted to him. And she's kind of just this person who goes to the bar and gets drunk and sees someone of her same ethnicity and is just like, well, I can latch onto this for the period of time. And it kind of plays as a romance, but I don't remember which piece explicitly stated this, but you're kind of witnessing something from a femme fatale's perspective who doesn't know that she's a femme fatale, which I thought was so fascinating, because I think this character has convinced herself that she does love this person, but does she love this person, or is she just grappling onto whatever she finds to be somewhat familiar in this country that is unbeknownst to her and is considered to be, from her perspective, lower class because she's from America, and just latching onto that, and anything she can do to get out of this country she will do. And it ultimately is all about what is transactional from her perspective, and not even consciously. And I think that this film, in traditional Claire Denis style, is beautifully hypnotic, explores bodies with her she explores bodies with her camera in a way that is completely erotic, and yet at the same time completely like, what am I thirsting for most in this moment when I am feeling like I have nowhere else to be, and or I cannot serve any purpose, and I'm trying, and what do I thirst for when I am dealing with this? And frankly, I think that what I love about this movie, and what I love about a lot of Claire Denis films, is that she's not really a good person. She's just lost and drunk and a mess. And I think that when it premiered at Cannes, people were kind of like, well, this is her worst film. And then I saw the thing and I was like, are you all high? Like, I'm just trying to picture myself, like, if you saw a Claire Denis film, and I've been to film festivals, but if you saw this stacked in between 5 other movies, you'd probably be a little sleepy, a little drowsy. And I've read takes from people I deeply respect out of Cannes talking about how this is not her best, or how it's sleepy, or all that stuff. But I do think that it very much falls into her line of work. And I kind of love that this movie, over time, since it's escaped that film festival, people have been much more receptive to it. And that's when I eventually came around to it. And I think Margaret Qualley gives one of the most insanely watchable performances of the year, because she consistently changes tones and moods kind of erratically based on her state. And she's drunk half the time. And she's, you know, desperate, and she's sad and lonely, and I don't want to spoil what happens at the end, but what does ultimately happen at the end does make sense for her character without making her entirely sympathetic. So I think that I'm a sucker for her Claire Denis aesthetic, the way she explores the human body, explores sexuality, explores politics in countries that are not her own, and I think that it is absolutely one of the highlights of the year. So, a film that worried me, like, oh, is this filmmaker finally making, like, a film that I don't care? Like, is this filmmaker who I deeply admire and respect, did she finally first make her first bad film? And then, like, no, oh no, this is still one of my favorite things of the year. And I think it's absolutely essential to her filmography. So, yeah.
Sounds really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a lot of Claire Denis, so I need to get on that.
Same.
The ones that I have seen, kind of not been the biggest fans, and they've been some of her more lauded movies, but I did really love U.S. Go Home.
That's my favorite that I've seen so far.
Yeah,
U.S. Go
that
Home
one
is
kicks
so
ass.
good. It's so good.
That I wish that would get like an actual release, but I think it's like
Same.
the soundtrack is probably too.
There are copyright issues there. Yeah.
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 Okay, that was number 9, so we're now on to number 8. Kind of try. I'm gonna try my best to kind of speed through ones that I don't have much to say. But my number 8, Banshees of Inisherin, directed by Martin McDonagh. Bryden, I think this is on your list later, so
Maybe.
just well, if it is, wink wink, then you give your thoughts when we get to it, so we can kind of speed past this. But yeah, Banshees of Inisherin, I was not expecting to really like it. It was kind of, I mean, after 3 Billboards, which I thought was but yeah, it was a lot funnier than I thought it would be, and also the way that it flips the tone just so effortlessly. But yeah, it's this year's entry of guys being dude cinema, and what better entry than that? And also, I don't think I've ever seen a movie, or at least haven't seen many, where it's just about, like, it literally is just about, I don't want to be friends with you, and that's the entire movie. and it's not a big revelation. It's not because you did this, or it's a third act reveal or something like that. It's just, I don't want to be friends with you. That's it. And how somebody could just literally let that eat them alive because they have such a expanded view of themselves. And also, I love that Colin Farrell is, like, not a terrible guy. He's just annoying, and he's not. What was the conversation with him and his sister? It's like, you're not dull, you're just this, and you could describe him in many different ways, but it's just like, that's just how things happen. And of course, it goes into wild ass directions that you would never expect, but yeah, it's a fun time, and I need to lock down and finally watch In Bruges. So that's my number 8. Bryden, number 8, what do you got?
My number 8, mentioned it earlier. It's Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood by Richard Linklater. Linklater, one of my favorite directors. It's interesting. I read earlier this year the oral history book by Melissa Mayers about Daisy Confused, which is a fantastic read.
I've heard it.
And it really, like, getting, like, some of the insights into, like, Linklater's background growing up in Texas, and, like, being kind of the kid who like questioned, like, tradition and everything else. I'm like, do we really need to paddle kids who are going into high school, like, each year or whatever? This movie, Apollo 10.5, really falls in line with his sort of inquisitive status quo questioning ethos, wondering if tradition is as great as everyone says it is, and if there might be something better beyond where he is now. So that means it's ideal that, the movie revolves around the main kid having a fantasy about leaving his family behind to go to space, where he is important and valued, and he doesn't get that all the time. I mean, the movie, Linklater, his movies do have, like, a very, kind of have a very easyggoing hangout sort of feel, but then there is, like, a real harshness to some of the scenes. They're, like, one in this movie, the kid's family, one of their jokes is that, like, there are no baby pictures around the house because you were adopted, so sorry. And then, like, it's, like, really fucked up that that's, like, what they say to him. Yeah. So the movie's not just, like, it's not just, like, a plainly a nostalgia trip. It's, like, showing, like, it's very critical about, like, the lessons that you got from the adults in your life, and how they had backwards views. There's a scene where, like, they're watching news footage, and like around the space launch, and there's like a black interview. He says like, yeah, that money for the space launch could be going towards feeding black people, and it cuts to like the scene is great because it cuts to one of the daughters going like, right on, and it's like, one, it's funny because that's her reaction, and two, it's like completely earnest because like, yeah, like that is right to agree with it. And then it cuts to the dad, who's played by Bill Wise from Krisha. He just looks annoyed and everything, and it's like the movie is like so the movie is like, it's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like Armageddon time, where it's like looking back at these things and like wondering like, like should things have been like that? Like, did I get like some of the wrong lessons from that? And then like looking back at that, and it's, this movie's been disqualified from the Oscars for Best Animated category for using rotoscope animation, like using actual actors and having animation over them, whatever. That's a whole thing. But I think it's
then
very
disqualify
ideal.
Avatar. I'm sorry, and I like Avatar. I like The Way of Water, but bullshit. I'm sorry.
No, it's totally
Yeah,
fair to
it's
be
stupid.
annoyed about it. But no, it's like a very ideal look for this movie because it looks lifelike, but also very exaggerated at the same time, and it's ideal for portraying the headspace of a very over-imaginative, confused adolescent. Yeah, really, really like that one a lot. Linklater, I mean, he's a filmmaker I'll always show up for. So yeah, definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of his work.
Nice. I also know that Avatar is not qualifying for animated film. I just think that whole thing is bullshit. So I just want to qualify.
Well, then and
clarify
it's
that.
like as if like full CG movies or whatnot don't use templates and stand-ins with humans and blah blah whatever. It's stupid. It's yeah. Put that in there. Why not? I mean, it is animation. It's just on top. Whatever. Charlie, you're number 8.
My number 8 is a little-known film called Playground, which I will admit I caught up at the last second because Slant's best film of the years, Slant's best cumulative films of the year, they had this on there, and I was like, I've never heard that, and I've never heard of that. It is a film that from the first shot to the final shot, I had a lump in my throat, and I felt like I was gonna cry the entire movie. And to be fair, it is only 72 minutes long, but I felt like I was like internally crying the entire movie. And I will say it is about a film. It's about this little girl named Nora, and it's about her first few weeks at school. The time is kind of vague in terms of how much is explored, but it's basically this little girl, Nora, played by Maya Vanderbeek. It's French, I apologize. I don't know how to fully pronounce her name, but she's brought... Okay. Oh, God. She's brought...
Will you please get your banjo out of my belly button? Okay,
yeah. Keenan is making jokes in a bathtub in the background the entire time.
Playground, it should be bathroom.
It should be bathroom. Yeah. But she's basically... It's her first day of school, and she's so terrified. And she has tears in her eyes, and her brother's like, don't worry, you'll be fine. And I'm gonna just sum up the very, very loose plot real quick, because I don't think many people know about this film, but she's a younger sister to this older brother who's been in school before, and she's terrified and just wants to hang out with her older brother. And then very quickly she realizes that her older brother's being bullied, and it's very much about hierarchy, even at a young age, when you go to school and you realize that few people are willing to listen to you, that adult figures, even when they have the best intentions, are incapable of protecting those that are dearest to you, even when they're in a bad situation. And it has been compared both positively and negatively to a Dardenne Brothers film. I happen to love the Dardenne Brothers. I've not seen some of their most recent stuff. I think the last thing I saw was The Unknown Girl, which was in 2016. But for those who don't know the Dardenne Brothers, if you've seen 2 Days, One Night, or Kid with a Bike, or La Promesse, or Rosetta, it is beautifully shot, all at children's eye levels, where whenever there's an adult in the frame, they'll always have to peer up and whatnot. And
It's like Charlie Brown or Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Kind of, except they don't speak with a wah, 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 but they might as well.
Kick-ass.
I mean, they might as well. And what's sad is that even the adult figures have the best intentions, but don't fully understand what the kids are going through. And what I think is what really struck me were two things. One, I have a younger sister, and while I was not in the same grade range where it was like my little sister could see me bullied in high school, even though I was picked on a little bit, not enough to the extent that this kid was. Just that, I guess my second point is that, like, it kind of relates to, by examining these small children in a new environment where they're expected to be exceptional. Sometimes there are outside forces that are literally like, there's nothing we can do. And it really hit me hard and made me deeply empathetic to everything my sister was going through, as someone who, even though the focus isn't on an older brother, I deeply felt for what these kids have to go through, these minefield of just like these societal pressures that in order to succeed, and how cruel both life as a child and life can be as an adult. And it deeply moved me. I don't want to sugarcoat this either. It's a brutal, emotionally brutal film. There's not anything graphically violent. It doesn't end in tragedy or anything like that. But I think that the ways in which it examines trauma through these young kids and what they experience may affect them for the rest of their lives, I found to be incredibly powerful. So that's what I'll say about that. So yeah, that
sounds really good. Yeah. Do you know if it's available anywhere? Like, how did you see it?
So
I'm curious.
I saw it.
It's on iTunes right now.
iTunes right now. No,
it's on Movie.
It was released very early this year. It was like one of those things that was like 2020, 2021. It got reviewed very early on in the year, and I believe Manohla Dargis from the New York Times had it in her honorable mentions list. It is, and again, it's not an easy sit, but it's a quick sit. It's 72 minutes, and God, we need more films with that runtime. For the record,
beautiful runtime, as Jack Draper would say.
Yeah, for the record, a movie needs to be as long as it can be. I'm not going to fault any film for being long, but RRR is 3 hours long. It was on my list, but I think that there's not a wasted second. I think Laura Wendell, the director, has a keen eye for how to direct young actors in particular, and I think that it also, I read an interview with her, it took her 5 years to write the script, which is why it was on my list for screenplay, which, even though it's not a dialogue heavy film, I put it on my BAFTA screenplay ballot because she had to analyze just how children act and speak and interact with each other today, and it felt all too real, even though I haven't been a child for 25 years. So, like, I found it very pulverizing, but also deeply moving and well worth your time. So,
hell yeah. We on to 7 now, I believe.
Yes,
we've all done. Okay, my 7. It will be my quickest review. My number 7 is Top Gun Maverick, directed by Joseph Kosinski, and my review is hell yeah. Bryden, what's your number 7?
I still need to see Top Gun Maverick, although I do have Paramount Plus now, so I'll be watching it the way it was meant to be seen on my laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it's great. My number 7 is Bones and All by Luca Guadagnino. I caught up with this one in theaters earlier this month. Really unsettling for how humane it is, and how the movie will cast this very dreamy romantic tone, but then the threat of something horrible is on the horizon. I like how Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score will be these very calming acoustic guitars, but then it becomes all distorted as bad stuff starts happening. It's almost kind of like the movie and the music itself is suppressing the true nature of a horror film and everything, and that's what it turns into as it's trying to the characters trying to suppress their true nature. And I think what makes the movie really kind of heartbreaking as well as scary is that the characters do occasionally show signs of, by the way, Sorry, I'm talking about some. We know what these movies are about because we've seen them, but not everyone
Yeah.
who is listening knows. It's about cannibals. This movie about
Yeah,
two.
romanticizes
Excuse
cannibalism.
me?
Yeah, half star. Get it out of here.
But
Disgusting.
But what I think is beautiful about the movie and heartbreaking is like how it does like show them as people and like who like are capable of feeling bad or at least wanting to feel bad about it and wrestling with that and then having actual and like the idea that like there could be a side of a person that doesn't care about human life but also that does care about another person in their life. The love that Taylor Russell and Timothy Chalamet have for each other in the movie seems very genuine. And I think the movie is also really interesting, just like as a horror film, how like it is very focused on people and the spaces that they live in. Like there's like a lot of haunting shots of like just empty rooms where that people have lived, and there's a shot near the end of the movie where like you see a space that someone's been living in, and like just how quickly it's wiped away of like any trace of existence is like really like I mean it's just like really kind of scary about like how easily that can just like slip away, especially like in terms of like humanity. Really, and it's very good as like a lovers on the run sort of movie. It made me think of like stuff like Gun Crazy or Badlands and everything, where you are following these characters and like sometimes they have stretches where they're trying to live a normal life, and then bad stuff inevitably happens, and it is
David Gordon Green shows up. It's a whole thing.
It made me think actually like kind of the tone poem vibe that it's going for. I was thinking, why did David Gordon Green direct this? And I thought, wait, no, I've seen him direct horror movies. No thanks.
Exactly.
But yeah, and like it's Guadagnino, he's been noted I think for like how sensual his movies can be, focusing on skin textures and something like Call Me by Your Name, and I think this movie also is able to like sort of put that in like a kind of a very sensuous but also like unnerving vibe. I really like the scene where Timothy Chalamet's half flirting with but also like scoping out his the target at a carnival stand. Won't say what happens there, but that scene is like really like where like they got the head-on shots and like the red lighting on Chalamet and like where you feel bad for the victim because it seems like he's into it, and then like when you get the Chalamet and red light, it's like that is not good. It's really interesting. I would like to read. I've seen some writers. I need to read their pieces about like how the movie like stands as like a metaphor for queer repression. Willow McClay, I think, like wrote a piece about that, and I would love to hear about that because it is interesting how the movie does link queerness with cannibalism. Like the first maiming that you see is Taylor Russell biting a girl's finger off in what seems like at least like a very intimate moment.
They also have Ronald Reagan very early on a television set to emphasize that this is about to be, very emblematic of the AIDS epidemic.
That's really interesting, and I like there's scenes in this movie that made me really uncomfortable, and I like that it inspired those feelings in me, and like in ways that like I was put off by, but also like moved by. Like I like it is like really funny how the movie is able to like oscillate between those tones in ways that like are startlingly fluid. And I also want to give like a quick shout out. I don't want to take too much time up on this movie, but Taylor Russell and Timothy Chalamet. I mean, Russell especially, who I think she was so good in Waves, and even in the escape room movies, she's fantastic. But like the way in which like her character's kind of inscrutable because like her whole emotional aura can change just from like the way that she carries her posture, where she will be like kind of withdrawn and like hunched over and everything, but then like there's a shot where she like spots Timothy Chalamet outside a grocery store, and like you get like this low angle shot, and she's sort of like arching her back, and then the way like the camera like cuts in from her perspective, like these rapid like zoom ins, it almost looks like it's something out of Carrie or something like that, and it's like, ooh, this is like really cool, like, and yeah, like she's like just so cool with like her body language, how she's able to convey like her character's level of intensity. And Chalamet, I think, Chalamet gets a lot of shit, I guess, because like he could go very big as a performer. I think it's like very watchable where he is just like so restless in his energy. But I also like that this character, like he's bizarre, but like also he's like, it's like he's trying to do an impersonation of an ordinary person. I mean, the scene where he meets Michael Stuhlbarg and David Gordon Green, the way that like he sort of like awkwardly like approaches for a handshake. It reminded me of the scene in Grosse Point Blank. This is a weird reference, but where John Cusack and Dan Aykroyd are rival hitmen who meet each other, and like they're both like reaching for their guns while they like step towards each other for a handshake. It's kind of like that in that moment. It's like, well, what tone should I be striking here?
I have to ask, what did you think of Mark Rylance in this film?
So It's a lot.
It's a lot.
But I did like it because like it is, I don't know, he's very tender and everything, but then like where he is like kind of got like this soft creaky sort of voice and everything, but then like the way that his face will just sort of contort as like he's rejected and everything, and it is like it does like sort of put you off where like when he like calls Taylor Russell the C word, it's like like it's like sort of a sign of like things to come. Like you almost don't need to see like the violence for it to happen and everything. And it's also like kind of it's he's always creepy even when he's soft. Like you're not sure if like he wants to he has sexual intentions towards her or fatherly intentions and everything. The way that he walks that line very uneasily is like really makes the character scary. But I could also understand people thinking, what the fuck is going on with this performance?
Yeah, I guess I saw this movie. Let me just also say real quick, one of the more memorable experiences I had working at the movie theater that I work at this year is that we had a free ribs screening, where we literally gave out free barbecue ribs during this movie, and I'm surprised nobody yacked. I'll just say that. I guess
that theater had to stank.
Oh,
afterwards.
it reeked. It was rancid. Like I was like, okay, sweeping up the bones. Like I literally, like, which I thought was a fun promotional thing. I hear you, Bryden. I wanted to love this movie. I didn't have nearly as many positive feelings towards it as you did.
That's okay.
And I'm just saying this because I know, Kevin, you've seen this movie too. I love everything that you got. Everything you got out of this movie, I wish I got out of it. As someone who loves Guadagnino and every theme that you're bringing up, I guess I just found the Mark Rylance character to show up conveniently whenever he was needed to push the plot forward.
Well, you can spell for miles.
Yeah, you can spell him for miles. Here, you're having trouble. Here's the lessons I need to teach you. Oh, I'm interested in you. Go away. You C-word? Oh, god damn it. And then, like, at the end, it's just like, it felt a little too convenient for me, but I think that you bring up great points as to why everyone is responding as positively to this film as they are, and why you did, and I wish I just had that sense of emotional catharsis that he had by the end.
Mark Rylance in the movie reminded me of the old guy at the bar in The Wedding Singer, where he's just like, I'm sorry, I used to be much stronger. Sounds like a country song. Yeah.
He also kind of he gave me vibes of the episode of The Simpsons where Krusty gets canceled and he holds the sign up that says we'll drop pants for food, and then Bart and Lisa show up and they're like, any takers, Krusty? Nah, that guy's giving it away for free, and he's just got his pants down and he just goes, old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be, ain't what she used to be, ain't what she used to be. Like that was the vibe I got from that performance. Just like, but I don't know, I feel like I should see this movie again, just even based on everything you're saying about it. It was something that I was deeply looking forward to, and just so.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I also like the presence of the Rylance character, not so much for the performance, but also like what he represents. Like he's their future of these characters. If they don't have if you don't have someone in your life, then what the fuck do you have to live for or whatever? It's like this guy, like and like the way that like they're outrunning a fate that they can't escape or whatever. Where like Taylor Russell gets on the bus and it's just like Rylance like standing there like glaring after her on the bus. Like it is like kind of a foreboding warning of what is going to come to these characters in their life as these characters. But yeah, no, I don't know. I like it's nice that it's divisive. I suppose that you don't get a lot of you don't always get a lot of those.
Oh yeah.
Charlie, your number 7.
My number 7 is The Eternal Daughter by Joanna Hogg, who just last year gave us The Souvenir Part 2. I liked The Souvenir Part 1 quite a bit. I thought The Souvenir Part 2 was a masterpiece that made me appreciate Souvenir Part 1 even more, and The Eternal Daughter made me appreciate both of those films even more, because it stars Tilda Swinton in a dual role as...
Is there any other role for her?
Is there any other role? I love movies where we have multiple Swintons. This one was no exception. she plays Julie, who is essentially the character from Souvenir Part 1 and 2. And I will say, if you haven't seen Souvenir Part 1 or 2, you can still see this movie. I still think you will get a lot out of it. But I also think it's worth noting that Honor Swinton Byrne, Tilda Swinton's daughter in real life, played her daughter in those movies, and now Tilda Swinton is playing a grown-up version of herself, and now she's playing her mother, who she played in both of those films, and they go to a haunted estate, basically, that is essentially where the elderly Tilda grew up, and it is now just a hotel where no one it seems to be, when they arrive, they claim that no one, that like all the rooms are booked and there's no way we can make exceptions, and yet it's occupied by an innkeeper who is truly passive aggressive in the most horrific ways, who claims, no, you need to be in this room, we couldn't make accommodations for this room, you absolutely have to stay here. It's hard to discuss this film without getting into spoilers, so I will not. It is very much a mood piece. It's a gothic drama, and it's very much about how our relationship with our parents and their memories affect us and the stories they tell us. And I don't want to give away too much, except that it is simultaneously cozy and deeply sad at the same time. Tilda is acting with herself in what I believe is the most restrained way, not even in a comic way. I love in Suspiria, where we have Tilda playing headmistress, elderly man, and also Jabba the Hutt. I mean, I love that shit. I love that shit. But here,
what is it, Electric Lust, where she plays like 4 different robots?
Oh, Technolust.
Technolust.
Oh yeah, where she literally dips a condom, a used condom, in like as a tea bag into like her glass, and she's like, "Yep, okay, yep."
Yeah.
But Joanna Hogg, I think, is one of the best semi-autobiographical filmmakers we have right now in terms of making films about herself as an artist, about the ways in which her family history has affected her, the ways in which she's haunted by her ancestry and her past. But I'm being a little vague here because I don't want to give away, because it is a 90-minute movie in which it's basically Tilda acting as mother and daughter, and you can't really spoil this movie without having seen it. And I just don't want to give away exactly what makes this film so captivating, and it's very minimalist in many ways, but I found it deeply, deeply moving in how Joanna Hogg analyzes her own sense as an artist, and how her relationship to her family and her family's history affect her as an artist. And don't want to say too much about this, because I think you have to go in and just vibe with it. So yeah, that's my number 7.
All right, my number 6 is Gimme, directed by Steven Soderbergh. This movie fucking rolls. It's probably the best pandemic movie I've seen. I really can't think of any besides ones that are kind of about it, but I mean, it's very much is about it. Yeah, Stars and Noon as well.
Songbird, bro.
It's a different kind of pandemic movie, though.
Did you see Locked Up? What was the Doug Lyman one?
Oh, Lockdown.
Lockdown, my bad. Songbird.
Oh God, that was like the first one with Demi Moore. Wasn't she in that one?
Yeah. But yeah, it's like, what is it? Also like 90 goddamn minutes. It's just
beautiful.
It's just a lean, tight thriller that what is it? Madison Bell from Swim Fan shows up for like 5 seconds. What more do you want? I hope this gets released on Blu-ray. That'd be nice. Yeah. But yeah, I have a feeling we're going to be talking about it more later, so that's my number 6. Bryden, your number 6.
Yeah, Kimmy, the perfect palate cleanser after National Lampoon's Van Wilder. My number 6 is Emergency by, I want to get this director's name, Kerry Williams. I believe it is his feature debut based off a short that he did. It is about a group of college students, played by Donald Watkinson, R.J. Seiler, and Sebastian Chacon, who... They all go. They come back to their house on the way to a party and find out a white girl has passed out in their house. And Kyler and Watkins are black and Chacon is Latino. So they realize that the optics of this, from the perspective of a largely white society, are gonna have like some unfair perceptions about them. So they try very surreptitiously to get this girl to the hospital, but then like very bad things happen to them where like, you know, their taillight gets busted, and you know the girl's sister, who's played by Sabrina Carpenter, she is going on her own pursuit and we're sharing her gaze sometimes, like, and as she misinterprets things. So the movie's very smart about that in terms of like what things look like from the wrong perspective. But the movie is fully aware of like the horrible possible outcome of this situation if people have like have dangerous interpretations about the situation. But there's also a lot of very fun banter. It is largely a comedy, but just like loaded with this unbearable tension. And Watkins, I think, gets like sort of like the high strung sort of like a nervousness of it all, while RJ Cavalier is kind of like the more cool headed comedic relief while doing this. And sorry, I'm rambling. I saw this movie also like about quite a few months ago, but it's a very impressive tonal tightrope that Kerry Williams walks in the movie, and I think his actors are all more than up to the task. And the ending definitely like leaves a real gut punches. Like the characters sort of have to live with what they've gone through. But then there's also not soft pedaling the shrill racism of the Sabrina Carpenter character, who is just like having all kinds of horrible perceptions, misconceptions about what's happening. Really strong movie. Highly recommend. That's my time on that.
I missed it, and I'm sad that I did, because I've heard, like you, that it's quite great.
It's on Prime whenever you want to watch it. So
hell yeah. Charlie, you're number 6.
My number 6 is No Bears by Jafar Panahi. I will admit this film is not available just yet. I am very, very, very lucky to have gotten a press screener for it. It is very much about Jafar Panahi, the director, playing himself, making a film in lockdown. If, for those who don't know, Jafar Panahi has been on house arrest in Iran, or was on house arrest back as early as 2010. If you are familiar with this film, this is not a film that is all about him, and it's semi-autobiographical. And here he is making a film about... he's making a film just about... the injustice about making art in Iran, and he is still on house arrest in this film. And unfortunately, without being too specific, he captures something on film in this movie that threatens the lives of others, threatens the lives of a few others, as a matter of fact. And it's very much, without trying to get too spoilery, it's ultimately about what is necessary as a form of political call to action, and being an artist, and how that will affect you and what you're trying to state, and how it may negatively affect others in your pursuit of making said art. It is devastating and haunting, and it is not in theaters until next year, which is a bummer, because, and I hope people seek it out who are able to seek it out. It's probably not going to get wide, it is certainly not going to get wide distribution. I hope that those who are able to seek it out where they can do, because for those who don't know, Jafar Panahi was actually arrested, and he's still in jail for basically calling out injustices within Iranian society. And watching this, knowing that, because that was about 6 months ago, I want to believe, makes this film all the more powerful. And I think that it is both as a film dramatically incredible. It is dramatically one of the most compelling things you'll see this year, but also as a Hall of Mirrors reflects Panahi's own confliction when it comes to how far he should take himself as an artist, as a member of society, and what that of his country's society, and what will ultimately befall others if he consistently puts others in danger. So I know that's very, very vague, but many people haven't had a chance to see this yet, and I don't want to spoil what the incredible impact that this film had on me, and hopefully will have on other people who are able to seek it out in the new year. So, yeah.
Hell yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
My number 5 is Prey, directed by Dan Trachtenberg.
Ooh.
This movie rips. It rips even harder after going through all of the Predator movies, and I was like, oh, this is only one of 2 good ones. Okay. But yeah, especially after watching the 5 before, I was just like, thank God they did something different, because all the rest are just the first movie being remade, but worse. But yeah, Amber Midthunder's such a great lead in this.
She's
I want to see her in
phenomenal.
more stuff. Yeah, just amazing stuff.
I mean,
And-
real ones know her from The Ice Road, which came out last year. So, you know.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. She is great. Yeah.
in Bryden's top 5 of last year. But yeah, I also wish it got a theatrical release, because I'm sure this would have been a fucking blast in a theater. Yeah, number 5. Bryden, you're number 5.
Nice. Yeah, my number 5, as discussed earlier, Banshees of Inisherin by Martin McDonagh. This movie is great. I loved seeing this
Hell
in a
yeah.
theater where everyone was laughing at like a lot of the jokes, because there is like a lot of like great banter. I love the way McDonagh will have like have characters repeating certain phrases, even no matter like how much of a mouthful it is to repeat and everything. Where like like Colin Farrell says, like, if I said something to you when we were drunk and I don't remember it, I'm sorry. But if I, and like he'll like repeat something, that's like one part of the phrase, and he'll repeat it like 3 other times in the conversation. It's really, really snappy. I'm of course doing a terrible job of bringing justice to it.
No, but it's all too relatable, is what you're saying. Is that what you're trying to say? Because I get
Yeah,
that. I get that.
And
Yeah.
I also
You didn't say feckin' enough, but I got it.
yeah, and I do think the movie. I mean, I don't even think it's funny until it's not. It is like it's funny, and then that's like really bracing. And like it's. I knew the general premise of the movie, that it was like someone doesn't want to be friends with. Brendan Gleeson doesn't want to be friends with Colin Farrell anymore. But what's like so devastating and shocking about the movie is I think about how Gleeson. There's the scene where Gleeson lays out the premise of like, if you don't leave me alone, this is what I'm gonna do. And Farrell, the look of horror and hurt in his eyes as he realizes just how meaningless he is in this guy's eyes, just like wrecks him to his core. Is like I mean, that's the heart of the movie. It's like it's so heartrending and everything. But then, I mean, I also love Carrie Condon in the movie. Who like I realized
She's
seen
amazing.
like 5 other movies with her.
So good.
Did not pick up on it, and like I hope she gets like more meteor roles after this, because like she's
Yes.
great and everything. I mean, the scene. I mean, it's so funny when she's fending off Barry Keoghan's advances in the movie.
Oh, that's so good.
Where like she's like sort of like shaking her head like, wild? Am I wild? What do you mean? And then, but then like the scene where she like shuts him down more politely is like just like the emotions where she's touched by his advances, but then also just can't feel that way about him. Like the way she like kind of navigates not wanting to hurt this guy while also being honest is like so well played. And I think also the way her character functions in the movie, where she realizes that not everyone likes her, like the brutal cop who like says like no one actually likes ya, like that the scene where she like cries about that is like so heartbreaking. But then like where she realizes that there is love in her life from her brother, and even Barry Keoghan, the local idiot, but like how like she realizes that doesn't let her get her down. And Farrell was like kind of like the devastating inverse of that, where like he can't get over this, and it is like and the lengths that he goes to try to preserve this relationship that really probably in the grand scheme of things is not worth it, is like it's so sad but like so relatable and everything, and but also like very funny, because like it's just like becomes so over the top. Yeah, it's like it's such a humane movie, and but also so funny without ever pulling his punches. And also like it's funny how like this town does not look like the best place to live because it is so cloistered.
No.
But like I love the way they film like the dark
It
interiors.
looks so beautiful.
It looks like so cozy, even though it is dark. Inside those like wooden lantern lit pubs, like there is like a real hominess to it that is like comforting, even while the characters are very hostile to each other.
At the beginning of the movie, I was like, I need to go here now. And then by the end of the movie, I was like, oh my god, I can never live here, because the isolation and depression that will sink into my bones will be unbearable.
Yeah. I looked up, and there is a movie Carrie Condon and Colin Farrell were in 2003 called Intermission.
Oh yeah, I'd like to see that.
Well, the top review on Letterboxd made me laugh. It says, "There's nothing more Irish than having a U2 song play as Colin Farrell threatens a motorist with a shovel."
Sounds like my favorite movie. Great.
Sounds great. Yeah. Charlie, you're number 5.
My number 5 is my favorite documentary of the year. It is All the Beauty and the Bloodshed by Laura Poitras. You might know her from the Edward Snowden doc, Citizen4. This time she focuses on an artist, Nan Goldin, who has been a very pronounced, well-known artist. I will admit, I'm going to lay my own cards on the table. I didn't really know much about Nan Goldin. And I think if you don't, that's totally fine, because like me, I was totally enraptured in all of her, in what she wanted to capture through photography primarily, and other forms, through outsiders in the world, primarily in America today. And it ultimately deals with her combining her own work with, much like No Bears, which I talked about, it's very much about, even though No Bears is a fictional film and this is a documentary, kind of deals with her own call to action as an artist, and using her art as a as a form of political protest against the Sackler family, who is has donated to several museums and other places of other facilities within the art world. But they are also very much responsible for the opioid epidemic. And Nan Goldin is very open from the first frames of the film to being a survivor of opioid addiction. Oh, and wow. Using members of a foundation that she founded called Pain to bring them down, to make them complicit in knowing how much, as the title very much conveys, how much, how many lives they've taken as a result of being responsible for this. And it just got released, even in limited places across the country. It just got released in December. I think it is undeniably devastating, and it is not an easy sit. There are scenes that are absolutely wrenching, but I in terms of creating a portrait of how to use art as a political weapon to bring billionaires down for their crimes, and combining what talents they have as unique voices, I was absolutely floored by this thing. I couldn't recommend it more highly. So that's my number 5.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Need to watch it. Can't wait.
I'll be watching more documentaries next year, so that might be one of them.
I have been terrible with documentaries this year. I just want to also lay that on the table.
Totally
I've been terrible with documentaries, and this is one of the few that I caught, and it absolutely tore my heart into shreds. So,
hell yeah. You didn't watch the found footage phenomenon? You didn't watch that documentary?
I did not.
Is that just me? Yeah, it's pretty bad. Anyways, my number 4 is a cheat. My number 4 is X and Pearl, directed by Ty West. Kind of talked about this already, but both of them, I know I had to. If I didn't cheat, Pearl would probably be in like my number 8 slot. But yeah, it's just it's so great to have this now turned trilogy at the same time that the Halloween reboot trilogy is going on. While one brings me nothing but anguish, pain, and disappointment, and the other one I'm just like, yeah, why not? Make another one. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. You got like $1 million. Go make another movie with Mia Goth. Give her a 7-minute monologue that kicks ass. Yeah, big fan of these. Can't wait for Maxine next year. It's going to kick ass.
Yeah, same.
Bryden, you're number 4.
My number 4, Charlotte Wells' After Sun. Love this movie. Oh my gosh. Just like a beautiful, and you know, it kind of relates to another, it reminds me sort of another movie on my list that I'll get to later. I won't say yet, but it's a great movie about looking back at your childhood and realizing how you're not able to understand your parents until like hindsight 2020. You know, the movie has like, and the movie has like this really haunting quality where it is looking back at this girl's vacation with her father, who is not much older than her. And framing him in like these in these ways that like you don't see him in the present, so like the implication is that maybe something happened to him or that he is no longer alive. But the way the movie like frames him like from like low angles where he is like standing on a ledge, or like having him like in these, seeing him through screens and in these like very like rapidly lit flashing lights, sort of strobe light rave sequences, where like wanting to reach out to him and touch him but not being able to, and like that sort of like heartbreaking inability. It's really like it's really quite rending. And Paul Mescal, I think, is wonderful in this, where he is like kind of like he will behave like an overgrown kid sometimes, like throwing dinner rolls at like these helpless hotel workers, but then like he will like have these moments of like startling openness where like he talks about like I can't believe I made it to 30, I can't picture myself at 40, and then like he kind of just freezes as he realizes about the implication of that.
God damn it, Bryden. I'm getting choked up just hearing that.
It's so beautifully played, and I love it's one of my favorite pieces of music soundtracking near the end of the film, as like this all comes to a head, where it is like the idea of like wanting to reach out to someone who is no longer in your life and not being able to. It's just it just gets me. Yeah, it's just a lovely movie, and I think it will definitely speak to people who want to like understand who have like close relationships with their parents and want to understand them. Yeah, that sounds, I don't know. Whether you have a nice relationship with your parents or not, this movie, it conveys its ideas very effectively, and with visuals too. Goodness, that sounds stupid. Anyways, yeah.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. No, it doesn't at all. I'm just going to jump the gun and say that might be higher up on my list, and the film that you are also referencing might be my number 4. Or, no, wait. Oh, shit. Did I... Wait.
Number 4, you're next.
Okay, number 4. I think the film that you were referencing is The Fabelmans, which is my number 4.
It fits with that. It was another movie I was thinking of, but I'll get to that later. But yeah, Fabelmans.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, The Fabelmans, I will just say, this was, when I voted in the Boston Online Film Critics Association, I had this at number 9. I rewatched it with my parents last night, or yesterday. I mean, what else is there to say about Steven Spielberg? The guy's a master. I have not responded as highly to anything he's made since, I want to say, Munich?
BFG?
No. I don't even remember the BFG. I did see it, but God, put a gun to my head and be like, farts? That's all I can remember about that
Big
one.
farting giant. That's
yeah. But I think this is the best film he's made in over a decade. I think everything that Bryden is also saying about After Sun, which might come back later, I think that I think that this film is so beautiful and hits way too close to home. It's someone who is not a filmmaker but is obsessed with film and how much art means to someone and how much it can almost take over you passionately in a way that might, especially at the age in which Spielberg's depicting a version of himself, can overtake you in terms of everything else that's going on in your young life. And I was astonished by how self-critical some of these scenes are. Without spoiling anything, there is a devastating scene in this film that I will not go into detail about, but there's a mirror in a shot that shows him, and it's not actually happening in the film, but it's showing him, how would I film this? Which is eventually what he's doing in general. And I found it to be one of the most nuanced films he's made in so long. I think that the cast is phenomenal. I think that Spielberg often gets criticized for being too blunt or too sentimental with his certain Hollywoodized quote-unquote sheen. And I always think there are prickly things lurking underneath the surface. And this movie, certainly upon a second viewing, hit me even harder. And I'm sure it's going to be an awards consideration, but this is, I'd say, out of all the films that are going to get, like, high praise awards consideration, this is the one that I think has the most layers by a filmmaker that deserves the most attention in terms of that. And it just, even if you like, fuck the awards, what am I talking about? It's a great movie. It's a great fucking movie. And and for those who are like, well, he just grows up to be Steven Spielberg and we wouldn't care about him if he wasn't Steven Spielberg. A, I don't believe you. It's a great movie regardless. And B, get over it. I'm sorry. Like, he deserves...
You kind of can't watch it without that, so how can you...
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's like, you can't... it's that thing where, like, you can't... I can't separate this. Well, you're not supposed to. Get over it. You know? It's a great movie.
Also,
so
that's like hard. It's kind of like certainly too cold to say something like that. It's like, oh, this kid had a messed up family. Boo hoo.
Yeah.
But why should I care and everything? It's like,
yeah, but if the cast of Jackass Forever wasn't in it, it wouldn't be funny.
yeah,
so.
exactly. Also, he makes all of his family members into human beings, and he has been very open in interviews. I didn't want to put anybody, my parents who have now passed away. I believe his dad passed away at 104, which is insane. Yeah, he didn't want to put him through that. He doesn't demonize anybody. Everybody's a human being. Okay, it takes place in Spielberg land. Those are the rules. Get with it. What he's doing is great. It's a great movie.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Did I watch it? Yeah, I watched it yesterday. I liked it.
Oh, shit.
David Lynch with maybe the best heat check of the year.
Now get the fuck out of my office.
No.
Yeah. He somehow plays David Lynch and John Ford so well.
It was so weird. It was like, I looked and I was like, oh, there's like 5 minutes left. I was like, did I miss him? Was he in like heavy makeup? Like what? Then I was like, oh, I know what's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
My number 3 is I've been waiting because I want to talk about this so much. And it's one that's not going to be on either one of y'all's list, and probably not on a lot of people's list. Number 3 is Soft and Quiet, directed by Beth D. Arujo.
Which I did see. I did see. I know. This. Yeah.
I know. This is a movie that I did not even know existed until Charlie told me about it. I watched the trailer, and thankfully the trailer gives nothing away whatsoever. It's a great trailer. It gives you... So if you're... Just watch the trailer, because... I don't want to spoil it, because I got it somewhat spoiled, at least the initial reveal. Once you know what these people are, I knew that, and I kind of wish I didn't. But it's shot in quote-unquote one take. There's apparently like 4 cuts in it. They shot it, I think, over 7 days, and they had to do it like exactly at like 5:38 every single time, or something weird like that. But this is a movie that I also, before I watched it, I saw a lot of people being like, wow, this is so gruesome and in your face and blah, blah, blah. And then a lot of people being like, yeah, what's the point? Terrible people exist. What's the point? And after I got Charlie to watch it, because as soon as I watched it, I was like, yeah, you have to fucking watch it right now, because this is our shit. That you quoted Roger Ebert's review of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is like, the reason we should be watching this is because these people exist. And these people shouldn't exist just to get their comeuppance, because that's not what happens in reality. And there's a lot of people that I 100% agree that are just like, I don't want to see this in art, but it's just like, yeah, but life should imitate art, and if you're just going to ignore this and only exist in it through life, then I like movies that it took me, could not stop thinking about this for like a week. I didn't know if I enjoyed it or I was just like enraptured by it, or was just so shocked by it, or how far it actually went there. And I think, as far as the one-take gimmick of it all, I think it really works here, because it never gives you a chance to breathe. And I think that's a big driving force of the movie, is that you are with these people when this action is happening. There's no cutaway to a quiet room for 5 to 10 minutes before it ramps back into it. It's complete chaos for like an hour straight. And I think it's fucking brilliant, because I was enraptured in it through the entire time. And I don't know, I love movies that challenge me, and I love people that you don't get to see, and some people say you shouldn't see, and they should not be depicted this way, because it doesn't very obviously show them as bad people, but if you can obviously read between the lines, it shows that they're terrible people. But yeah, just made me think a lot, and boy howdy, I don't know if I'll ever go back to it or go back to it anytime soon, but it's stayed with me ever since I've watched it.
Yeah, it's grueling. It's
Yeah.
to put it in one word, I'd call this movie grueling. And I completely agree with you, and thank you for that shout out, Kevin, because yeah, I watched this about a month ago. It's harrowing cinema, and I was not as taken by the one take as you were, mainly because I consistently felt that it was drawing attention to itself through that, but I certainly give credit to where it's due in that it's an audacious style that it clearly worked on you, and I think that's great. The other thing is that it is made by a Chinese American immigrant.
Yes.
It's Beth de Arujo, who, if this was made by, and I don't.
That's the thing.
I don't ever want to.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to say what people should make what movies. I mean, that just comes down to policing. You shouldn't have to say that. But the fact that it is made by a Chinese American woman, and without spoiling too much, the people who these people eventually come to victimize are what I would assume are Chinese American immigrants.
Right.
And she was very candid in what I've read about, I'm paraphrasing here, but, she was basically saying, I've experienced a lot of racism in our country, and this is kind of me taking it to, the worst possible outcome. And it is, and yeah, I'm fucking flattered that you brought up, like, I did think about, some people, I think what's funny about this is it's universally acclaimed. If you look at it on Metacritic, it has like an 82. It's gotten like a huge fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's people who I understand absolutely why they find it to be morally repugnant.
1000%.
It is unbearable to sit through at times, especially certain scenes I never ever want to see again. At the same time, it is challenging, and I also watched it with my roommate who grew up in the South, and me being in my fucking Northeast liberal bubble, I had the question, I was like, do people really talk like this? And, he was just like, yeah, there are people who absolutely talk like this when they're in safe environments. And I had to question my own privilege multiple times watching this thing, and it challenged me in terms of like, well, I already know this. Do I need to see it? Well, sometimes people fucking need to see the shit. And I don't even love the movie as much as you do, but it did horrify me in ways that people probably never want to see. But sometimes to argue that this thing is completely repugnant without any sense of artistic merit, I think is a little naive. And I think that it absolutely does linger with you long after it's over. So
Yeah. God.
It's on my list.
That last shot where I was just like, okay, the movie's over. Wow.
Yep.
And then I gave you that, and I was just like, I could almost see that as a cop-out, but I'm also glad at the same time.
But at the same time, it doesn't provide any sense of catharsis. It provides you to fill in the
whatsoever.
blanks. And that I think is what... I think the ending is... I completely agree with you. I think the ending... It provides no sense of catharsis. It provides just the amount of what you need to see, and then hope will happen, if that makes any sense. Maybe. Who knows? I mean, that's the other horrifying, aspect of that movie. So, yeah.
Watch it with your mother. Bryden, you're number 3. I don't know.
If you watch this, I'm just imagining my mom being like, "You ruined Christmas. Get out!" Like,
Mom, there's like 5 more seconds. Don't worry. No, shoving you out the door.
God.
Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
No, it's all good. My number 3, as mentioned by Kevin earlier, Kimmy by Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah.
Soderbergh.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought this was your number 1, so I'm shocked.
It might have been my number 1 for like a while because I had not seen other movies that surpassed it until recently. But Soderbergh, I love that like he'll just make these movies that seem like toss up genre pieces, and then like they're like among some of the best stuff that he's ever made. This would like this might be in my top 10 for Soderbergh. I mean, he's made a lot of movies, so it's like it's hard to say. But I think this is like a really thoughtful movie about like surveillance and and also sort of like who gets believed in trying to report these things. I mean, the fact that Zoe Kravitz is an assault survivor in the movie and also a black woman and autistic as some friends have pointed out that like that's like she's autistic coded because she has like a puzzle keychain, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, like the movie and like showing how like hollow corporations are, like Rita Wilson saying like, oh hey, like I'm so sorry about this. Yeah, the sort of like very phony gentleness that she projects is like so it's so.
What are we doing here? Oh, yeah. It's so devastating when she asks that. Oh, God.
Yeah, and really empathetic in like how it places you so firmly in Kravitz's headspace. Like that scene initially when she hears the recording of what's happening, and the way that it's buried underneath the audio of Massive Attacks at Ursula Creeps. I mean, that's like just an incredible needle drop. Yeah. Where like that song like is like rising up and like. Having like these like sort of like this chorus of voices rising up, and like you get the sense that there's something uneasy in the song, but there's also something uneasy in the recording that's like dueling with it. And the way that like the film, it's like I'd love to know how Soderbergh did it, but like the way that the film was even shot seems to change when she goes outside, where everything like looks
so chaotic,
super rapid, and everything like everything seems to be moving at such a higher speed. It really like just gets like the anxiety of that character's headspace, which is like really unexpected. Like I think Soderbergh like cares about characters in his movies, but like I didn't expect like that such an intense sense of empathy in the way that he adopted that character's POV. And Kravitz is just like, she's such a facially expressive actress. Like, I mean, and like, I've liked her a lot. I've liked her presence in other movies, but like, it really kind of made me angry at like, wow, like she has not really had this meaty a showcase for her acting talents until this point, or at least not one that I could think of. Yeah. Certainly not in movies.
She had a really good role in Big Little Lies season 1, and then they completely
season 2. Jesus
Christ, they squandered that character so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that show, but like, yeah, they don't. Her character gets kind of the short end of the stick, character-wise. But yeah, it's great, and I love, and it's funny too. It works. It's just like I think Soderbergh is great at crafting like conventionally satisfying thrillers. There was a book that Aaron Baker wrote about Soderbergh as part of the Contemporary Filmmakers series, and he said like Soderbergh is like, he's always like very cautious or like concerned about like showing like the horrible effects of violence in like a way that's not enjoyable or something like that. And I don't know, I watch a Cuban, it's like, oh no, I kind of disagree. I think the violence in this is actually kind of satisfying when it gets to like the climax. I was kind of like pumping my fists, but like it's I just love these kind of like fleet economic thrillers with like some social commentary on its mind, but also just bolstered by like a great lead performance. Soderbergh just like pulled it off and makes it seem so effortless.
It's like there's things you can read into it, but also just works as just a straight up thriller. Like, I love movies like that where it's just like, it's not heavily metaphorical. It doesn't have to go into that. You could just watch it completely brain off and that shit will work. And if you just turn your brain on a little bit, there's a bunch you can read into.
Totally.
Yeah. Charlie, your number 3.
My number 3 is After Sun, which I won't spend too much time on because Bryden so eloquently conveyed everything that destroyed me in this movie. One thing I will say that I will say is there is a shot in this film in which it's semi-autobiographical, as you said, Bryden, about Charlotte Wells' own final time that she saw her father, and there's a shot in which her surrogate takes a Polaroid photo with Paul Mescal, and it is slowly developing, and you never fully see it come into full. And it watching this thing for the first hour, I loved it, but I was like, I see what this thing is doing, but I'm waiting for the payoff. And then the ending of this thing is so unbelievably devastating, and it is like second to my number 1, which I will not reveal, obviously, but it is a final shot that absolutely crushed me. Like, I think the editing by Blair McClendon, it's, in my opinion, some of the best editing of the year, possibly the best editing of the year. And the final shot and how it brings in everything that you've seen before and the timelines meshing with one another, and how it conveys everything in its final moments where you don't know exactly what happens, but you do at the same time, and how that all just completely collapses on top of your heart, just completely destroyed me. And I watched it late at night, and I was like, okay, I'm sobbing, guess I'll just continue crying myself to sleep now. Like, it just completely devastated me. And I think it's absolutely, Charlotte Wells is a force to be reckoned with. Best directorial debut of the year in my book, and I can't wait to see what she does next. This film,
Yeah, I mean,
gutted.
yeah, like one of the shots near the end of Mescal, like one of the poses that he strikes during that big dance scene near the end, when like it's like the strobe lights, it's like it's so haunting, the look that he has on his face, and also like wanting. I mean, it's funny how like there's like so many moments that feel like ephemeral in the movie, but then the way like the stillness too, where it will just be like a long shot of like Mescal like sort of swaying from side to side while smoking a cigarette, just wanting to stay in these moments that like are in the past. It's just it's so beautiful.
And the ways it brings up things like, we know that her parents are divorced, but you can tell Paul Mescal still has feelings for her. You don't know exactly what feelings, but you know they still have some sort of attachment. You know that she has these feelings about her father, who she never saw again, but does she even know exactly how he felt, or are these the feelings that she's putting into place? And there's certain things about classism with, like, they're clearly tight on money, and he's feeling depressed about his age. In terms of just being a functional human being in his 30s, just like, and how, without spoiling anything, she's now recollecting on that, just is so unbelievably empathetic and beautiful, and god damn it, this movie fucking wrecked me. So, yeah.
I need to watch it. God damn it. My number 2, cue the goddamn music. It's Jackass Forever, directed by Jeff Tremaine. Let's fucking go. The most fun I've had with the movie this year. As soon as it started, I started to get teary-eyed. I was like, my fucking boys are back.
Oh, this movie brought you to tears. That's beautiful.
I mean, it just brings me so much joy.
Mm-hmm.
Just a bunch of guys just hanging out, having fun, while abusing themselves. Why not? Silence of the Lambs skit is, I don't know. I haven't laughed that hard in a while. The opening, my lord. Yeah, it's just it brought me so much joy, and I really needed it at that time, and I love it. I love the guys so much. So glad they came back.
I'm glad that we, as a culture, have also come to. I feel like everybody's, for the most part. I mean, Jackass has always been divisive, but I feel like as a culture, people, like, I remember being in high school when the second one came out, and my mom was starting to let me see certain things, and she was like, you absolutely cannot see this, like it is absolutely, like, and like, as if it was like evil or something like that. And I kind of love that over time people are just like, no, these are, look, what, like them or not, they're fucking artists who are literally devoting their bodies for art, for entertainment, for and you know what, sometimes, like, slapstick comedy, it's still funny. I mean, like, not to bring this shit up, but like, from the silent era, people were devoting their bodies to literal physical harm or potential harm. I mean, and the fact that these people have such a bond with one another, the friendship,
my favorite thing is just the collective laughing. It makes you feel like you're with a bunch of your friends, and also it's just like, after everything, if it goes off with a hitch, everybody is just so happy and proud of another, and they're hugging and laughing. It's just like, what more do you want?
Exactly. I didn't think there would be one past 3. The fact that we got another one is a blessing.
I know, it's just so much fun. Bryden, you're number 2.
Yeah, my number 2 is the movie I was thinking of when I was talking about After Sun is a movie about understanding your parents from a child's point of view. It's Celine Sciamma's Petite Mama.
Oh,
hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What a lovely movie. I watched this with my mom last week, and like right away we were just like kind of like struck by how well Sciamma gets the way that kids talk to each other and move and behave. I mean, like the way that like the kid like tears open the bag of sex and like just sort of like savors each bunch of like the bit of the cheese bit. Like, it's like we could easily see our niece doing that, like that same gesture, and like feeding it to the mom. Like, I mean, that's like a funny joke that like the hands are reaching in out of the frame to feed the mom a juice box while she's driving. And it's so beautiful, like how like the way the main kid is so understanding of her younger mom. I mean, there's like the scene where they're play acting, and the the kid says, and the younger mom says, I want to be an actress, and she says it kind of sheepishly, and like you cut to like the daughter and being like, oh, like this is something I didn't know about my mom, and like she says, really? And then the way that she's so encouraging of it is like, you could be that and everything, and it's like showing how kids can be so understanding of each other in a way that adults aren't always are. And you know, the way that I also love that, like, you know, there is like a sense of wonder to the movie, and like not just in the performances in which the kids are so open with each other immediately despite not having met before. Like the way that, like, you know, you'll get like the howling wind when like you're like looking at an empty room and everything. It is kind of eerie, like the familiarity of it, you know, and the familiarity and unfamiliarity of this space and everything. Just like, you know, she's going between, she's in the one house and everything, but she's going to it in different timelines where it looks different, and it's just, yeah, no, it's a lovely movie, and it's so warm and open hearted, and the child performances are just like effortlessly natural and everything. I mean, like I found out afterwards that they were twins who were playing the mother and daughter, and it just, yeah, it feels totally lived in, and yeah, no, I really loved it. It's my favorite Shyamalan I've seen so far. I need to see a couple of other movies, but yeah, it's lovely, and 72 minutes, beautiful.
Yeah, incredible.
Charlie, you're number 2.
My number 2 is Crimes of the Future.
You depraved man. Hell yeah.
You dirty, dirty pig. No, but
Crimes of the Future, you're committing a crime of the present right now.
So
lock him up.
Yeah, I am. David Cronenberg's one of my favorite filmmakers, and that definitely comes into play. I mean, this is arguably my most anticipated film of the year, and I will admit, the first time I saw it with friends of the pod, Jack Draper and Brad Avery, we kind of saw it and we're like, huh, that wasn't what I was expecting. And then I saw it again merely 2 days later and was like, oh my god, this is like a like I knew it was a magnum opus, but just gathering everything that Cronenberg has ever wanted to say about the body, and how his types of commentaries about autonomy and what our sick, depraved yearnings for certain things building up into making commentaries about who we are as a fucking species, I found to be so provocative and so, yes, gross, but also challenging. I mean, I can't, you know, I haven't seen this since June of this year, but I can't think of another film that really really got me to question everything he was saying about where we're headed, why we are so technically, to put into a certain vague terminology, depraved as a human society, but also what we have agency over in terms of ourselves, our bodies, as going forward. I mean, it's hard to get into the plot, especially within this this confined episode that we have, but I found so much of what it's asking about, you know, it takes place in a society where pain is no longer something that human beings feel, and how does that make us operate? What does that mean when it comes to certain sects of government, and how they determine what we're meant and what we're allowed and allowed not to do? There are lots of queer readings that I have just loved reading over and over again about. There's trans allegories here. There's a film noir story here. There's Cronenbergian body horror. There's Kristen Stewart in what is one of my favorite performances of the year, almost making a self-parody of herself in terms of like her as a celebrity and her own path towards queerness. I can't really get into detail here other than to say it's a sick film, but if you're like me, you will get a lot out of it. And I oddly enough, I found it hopeful. at the end, without spoiling anything, for all of the yucks and ughs and whatnot, and the twists and turns the plot takes, I found this film to be very prophetic and very beautiful, even in its icky, mucky world that it prophesizes we might be headed towards. So that's my number 2.
Nice. I'm a bad Canadian who hasn't seen it, so I'll get to it soon.
Get on it. I know Kevin's not a huge fan.
I am not, no. Thing with Cronenberg is I'm very, very hit or miss, but I have 6 or 7 that I'll definitely go for the bat for. Let's fucking do it. My number 1 is Resurrection, directed by Andrew Siemens.
I need to see that.
This movie is fucking engrossing. I was watching this movie and I had no perception of anything besides what was playing in front of me. Rebecca Hall is the best performance I've seen all year. She's fucking phenomenal. She also gets a 7-minute monologue just like in Pearl, and it is the best scene ever. It is really fucked up, really anxiety inducing. I was so stressed out while watching this, but so thankful that something was getting to me at that level. Tim Roth is fucking terrifying in this movie. I wish I could go on longer, but it just for the sheer fact that I was just so utterly engrossed in this movie, and the fact that I'd heard that was just yeah, it's not that bad, and then the end happens, and boy howdy, and the end happened, and I was like, hell fucking yes, let's keep going.
The ending of that movie, I was like, wait, what? Huh?
Yeah, hell yeah. You're just I thought this was all okay. Yeah. Definitely looking forward to what this guy does next. He's only done one other movie, and it was 10 years ago, and nobody's really heard of it, so hopefully he does something else. But, God, can we just talk about Rebecca Hall and how even in bad movies, she's just bad in 110%? I don't even know if that's the right...
She's
want to talk about Late Favorite Man?
No,
I'm joking.
I mean, even in Godzilla vs. Kong, she's treating it like it's a fucking actor's showcase.
Kong bows to no one. I just said Gong bows
it's true.
to no one.
But even in a movie I think is fine, like Christine, she's fucking so great.
Oh, I have a lot of issues with that movie, but she's fucking great in that. Yeah.
I know, especially when you have Kate plays Christine, which is just hell fucking yeah, and then it's just oh, this is what the very by the books biopic would be, But yeah, goddamn, anything she's in, I know she's gonna be good in regardless. So that's my number 1, Resurrection.
Hell yeah.
Kicks ass. Check it out. Bryden, your number 1.
My number 1 is Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans.
Yeah.
Another movie I was very happy to see in the theater, where the audience was responding to it very pretty vocally, mostly during the laugh lines. I didn't hear people weeping or whatever during it, but no, it's I feel like people I've read some pieces about this movie about people saying oh, it's just showing this guy's idyllic home life or whatever, and I'm that. But it is it is the movie is looking back at these things with a real clarity that a child would not be able to understand, that in retrospect reveal themselves as kind of as bizarre or not, or not right with the family, whether it's the mom taking the kids out for a drive to see a tornado, or his that those kind of things that just sort of make you go huh, this is kind of weird, and then you don't really realize until later that it was something more messed up going on. And I think Spielberg is very keen at how he will weaponize images of something that looks very sentimental and feel good, and then show the more painful context underneath it. I mean, the scene where initially when the young Spielberg Stanton is making movies, he takes his mom into a closet and takes her hand and sits her down and has her watch the movie, and you're seeing the movie as they're watching it. It's this very sweet, wholesome moment as they share in this passion. And then when he's learned something very painful and uncomfortable about his mom as a teenager, he does the same thing. He opens up the closet, takes her hand, but then he is not joining her in the moment. And you were seeing just her face reacting to footage of what he has seen her doing. I'm being very vague because not everyone's seen the movie, even though this is based on, this is semi-based on Spielberg's life very heavily. It is the way in which like that space of like kinship becomes like a space of like a painful memory is like really it's kind of heartbreaking the way that like this kid is able he loves movies, but then like it becomes a thing where he has to shield it from like he uses it as shield from like all the hurt in his life and how he's not always able to do it, and it can sometimes like fracture his relationships with people in his life. And I think the movie is like very perceptive about all that stuff in ways that not everyone gives Spielberg credit for. And but then like the movie's also very funny. Like it has like lots of like great like fumbling like coming of age romance stuff with like him being pursued by a Catholic girl who loves the fact that he's Jewish. That's like really funny. And I don't know, and like the performances too are all like so beautiful. Like you said, Charlie, like everyone is a person and capable of deserving of understanding. This is one of Paul Dano's best performances. I've sat through a lot of movies in which he can drive me nuts, but like the way in which like his voice kind of breaks as he realizes that as he admits to his own son that he doesn't know what he's doing and needs help. And Michelle Williams, the way that she's like this very outsized personality, but it's like then the way that it can threaten to veer into like mania or like like intense happiness can like can mutate into like intense sadness. But like the movie has like such understanding. I guess because Spielberg is like is an older man now. He's older than his parents were in this movie. He really gets like how. I mean, this movie really gets how like parents can cross a line in talking to their kids about like the things that they're going through, and like how like when Michelle Williams tries to talk to her kid about the sexual problems that she's having with her husband, it's just like, geez almighty, don't talk like this to your kid. But like it also understands that like the pain that these characters are going through, and doesn't judge them for it, or doesn't condemn them for it.
Yes.
It's just a beautiful movie, and it's so great that Spielberg is still making movies that like are among his best. When he's been making movies for over 40 years, he hasn't run out of steam at any point.
No.
Yeah.
Charlie, the last to go. Let's do it.
My number one is Terrence Davies' Benediction, which is lesser seen, I think, than a lot of other films that we've been talking about. And to be fair, it lasted at my the one art house theater in Boston that I saw it at for about 6 days, which is a shame because it is a great film by one of our greatest working filmmakers. Terrence Davies is a British queer filmmaker, and in this case, I don't want to call it a biopic because it's not, but he provides a portrait of real life poet Siegfried Sassoon, who was a World War I veteran and was also gay, and back in a time when he had to suppress it, and he uses a lot of Siegfried or Sassoon's deeply closeted feelings about his trauma regarding what he saw during the war and with his sexuality, and turns it into poetry, and in terms of what he is able to Terrence Davies has always wrestled with religious guilt and his own queerness, and is able to provide it into this portrait of a man who was sadly forgotten by time. I will admit I didn't know anything about him until I saw this film, and it's also a great film, like many of other Davies, about artists who use the only thing that they have to push back against society, which is words or language or any type of way they're able to put it into writing. I think that, I saw this film back in May or June. I deeply want to revisit it. I wasn't able to before the show, sadly, so I know I'm being a little vague here, but the ways in which he's able to create this tone poem, like so many of his greatest films, like The Long Day Closes, and other films that are also literary adaptations, like The House of Mirth or Deep Blue Sea, he's able to Deep Blue Sea might have been a play. I haven't seen that one in a while either. But he's able to basically convey the pain of what we could have achieved over time had the world not been so cruel to us, and how much has been lost as a result of that. And I will also say it's hard to spoil this film because it goes it travels through various timelines and kind of because Jack Lowden, who in my opinion gives the performance of the year as Siegfried Sassoon, around the time that he was discharged, with Peter Capaldi, who's equally good as his older self, they kind of go back and forth in time in terms of how his forms of repression and his forms of mental anguish in terms of the war and his sexuality correlate into what he's building up towards, and then it all coalesces into what is, in my opinion, the most devastating final shot of the year, even over After Sun, which is just as devastating in a different way. But I saw this movie by myself in a theater on a Saturday night, was kind of like, what am I doing with my Saturday night? I guess I'll go see the new Terrence Davies film. Knew I was going to like it, had no idea how much it would just obliterate me. I cried all the way through the end credits. Usually when I've seen Terrence Davies films in theaters, most people are like, ugh, like what British what British what a slog to sit through. And like I even like by myself noticed in a very small theater other people were unable to move from their seats, and I cried all the way through the credits, and then I got back up and I walked to my car and I started crying again. And honestly, it's kind of why I haven't been able to revisit this, is because it moved me in a way that no other film has this year. I think it's one of the best films of the decade. I think that along with A Quiet Passion, this is which was all about Emily Dickinson in a very similar light. This cements Davies as one of the greatest filmmakers working today. So yeah, that's my deeply emotional, not very academically thorough recommendation of this thing.
It sounds great.
Yeah. I haven't seen any Terrence Davies. I know.
Neither have I.
I will admit, the first thing I saw was the Deep Blue Sea, and it was like, I couldn't get into it at
and
the
I thought
time.
that was Rennie Harlan, so that's really wild.
Yeah, people at the audience, they were like saying like, oh, British stuff, and also no fucking
This is
sharks.
the one with Rachel Weisz, not the shark.
And it is based on a play, Charlie. You were right. I looked it up.
Thank you. And it was almost like I couldn't get into its wavelengths because his films are so lyrical and they're so meditative in a way that when I saw that over 10 years ago, I wasn't able to fully grasp, or I was too impatient to get what he was going for. And over time, I think he's just he creates reasons why I go to the movies personally. So yeah, that's my number.
I go to the movies to see Aaron McGeehee get punched in the balls.
Well, I also go to the movies for that.
I know.
It was in my honorable mentions. Don't sell me short, Kevin.
It's called being the duality of man. Yeah.
Inside you, there are two wolves, etc., etc.
Jackass and Terrence Davies, forever you wrestle inside me.
Both share homoeroticism in a certain sense.
Yeah. Well, we did it. We ran a little long, so our anticipated movies, you can probably guess what they are. All of us just want to see Megan. That's it.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for that. It's gonna be so much fun.
Do we have less than a week for that?
It's the 6th.
Okay. So by the time you read this, or listen to this, you read podcasts, right? By the time you listen to this podcast...
I'm putting this out as an ebook, yes.
Yeah.
My
favorite film of the year is Benediction by Terrence Davies. It is so powerful.
After Sun, it works. After Sun, it works, visually, that sounds stupid. I'm sorry.
Jackass Forever, so funny.
Why were these humans invented to feel pain? Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.